Chapter 1761. Your Highness, when Hao told me yesterday that he would be going north with his classmates today, and would only be back in a few months. However, he did not tell me the details. Does your Highness know? In the new workshop of the Strange Interest Pavilion, in the side hall of the Tang daily editorial office, Li Ku, who had achieved his goal, was about to leave when he was stopped by Li Yu and asked by her. Li Ku paused and frowned. After a moment of silence, he turned to Li Yu and said, I do know a thing or two about this matter. However, this matter is a secret of the Academy and should not be leaked. When Hao did not tell you for your own good, and also for the sake of the teachers and students of the Academy, I hope Miss Li Yu can understand. He had memorized the Academy's confidentiality management regulations. The telegraph relay station was the Academy's second trump card project. It was a top-secret research project. Of course, it could not be told to outsiders. Li Yu's eyes flashed, but her expression was normal. She bowed to Li Ku and said, Li Yu understands. Thank you, Your Highness, for being honest with me. However, Your Highness, please tell me if the journey north is dangerous? Meng Wenhao was Li Yu's best friend. She could not ask about the details of the mission, but she wanted to know if it was dangerous. Li Ku paused and replied, Miss Li Yu, you don't have to worry about safety. There will be 1,000 Imperial Guards escorting them. Besides, when Hao is carrying out a mission in the Tang Empire, the local provincial government will also protect them. Hearing this, Li Yu breathed a sigh of relief and said, Then I'm relieved. Thank you, Your Highness. I should be able to draft the notice before the hour of the afternoon. When the time comes, I'll send someone to deliver it to Your Highness. Li Ku smiled and waved his hand. There's no need for that. The fact that the Yamacho handed over the editorial office to Miss Li Yu proves that your ability is outstanding. I believe in your ability. After the notice is written, just put it on the Datong Daily tomorrow. I'll take my leave first. He was going back to Chang to deal with the Golden Robe Guard's official business. Sending the notice back and forth would affect his efficiency. Li Yu smiled sweetly and said, Thank you, Your Highness, for your trust. Your Highness, take care. Your Highness, when Hao told me yesterday that he would go up north with his classmates from the Academy to do something today and would not return for a few months. However, he did not tell me the details. Does Your Highness know? In the side hall of the editorial department of Datong Daily in the new workshop of the Strange Interest Pavilion, Li Ku, who had achieved his goal, was about to leave when Li Yu suddenly called out to him. Li Ku paused and frowned. After a moment of silence, he turned to Li Yu and said, I do know a thing or two about this matter. However, this matter is a secret of the Academy and cannot be leaked. When Hao didn't tell you for your own good, and for the sake of the Academy's teachers and students going north, I hope Miss Li Yu can understand. He had memorized the regulations of the Academy on confidentiality management. The telegraph relay station was the second trump card project of the Academy. It was a top-secret research project. Of course, it could not be told to outsiders. Li Yu's eyes flashed, but her expression remained the same. She bowed to Li Ku and said, Li Yu understands. Thank you for your honesty, Your Highness. However, Your Highness, please tell me if the journey north is dangerous? Meng Wenhao was Li Yu's best friend. She could not ask about the specific mission of the Academy's teachers and students going north, but she wanted to know if this mission was dangerous. Li Ku paused and replied, Miss Li Yu, you don't have to worry about safety. This trip will be escorted by 1,000 Imperial Guards. Moreover, when Hao and the others are carrying out a mission in the Tang Empire, the local soldiers and horses will also protect them. Hearing this, Li Yu heaved a sigh of relief and said, Then I'm relieved. Thank you, Your Highness. I should be able to draft the notice for collecting military funds before 3 p.m. I'll send someone to send it to Your Highness. Li Ku smiled and waved his hand. There's no need for that. The fact that the Yamacho handed over the editorial department to Miss Liu proves that your ability is outstanding. I believe in your ability. After the notice is written, just put it on the Datang Daily tomorrow. I'll take my leave first. He was going back to Chang'an City to deal with the Golden Robe Guard's official business. Sending documents back and forth would inevitably affect his efficiency. Liu smiled sweetly and said, "Thank you, Your Highness, for your trust. Take care, Your Highness." Chapter 1762. Marquis's kindness to us is as heavy as a mountain. If Marquis has any orders, we will do our best to fulfill them. Boss Lin, please tell us what we should do. As soon as Chao Wendong finished speaking, Liao Shifan stood up and cupped his fist. That's right, that's right. Helping Marquis share his burdens is a matter of course. But as for how to do so, I hope Boss Lin can give us a plan. We will definitely do as you say. The rest of the people also agreed. Everyone, please take a seat and listen to me. Lin Wenyuan saw that the time was right. He gestured with his hands and said, Marquis intends to use the name of the Yan Huang Chamber of Commerce to solicit donations from all the merchants of Great Tang. Although our Yan Huang Chamber of Commerce has only been established for a year, under Marquis's wise leadership, we have become the most influential chamber of commerce in Great Tang. Now that the country is facing a crisis, we have to share the burdens of Marquis and share the burdens of the country. Tomorrow's Datang Daily will publish a notice to raise funds for the military. At that time, all the merchants of the world will know about this from the newspapers. As for us members of the Chamber of Commerce, first, we need to mobilize the forces around us to contact the other merchants around us and spread the news in these 2 days. Second, in 3 days, Marquis has authorized me to hold a donation gathering. All the merchants who are interested in donating will attend. At that time, I hope that the members of the Yan Huang Chamber of Commerce will take the lead in donating and set an example. Lin Wenyuan explained the plan that Li Ku had given him in detail. Everyone was silent for a moment before they agreed. So that's how it is. Don't worry, Boss Lin. Once I return, I will pay a visit to some of my friends in the capital. They have always admired the Marquis. I don't think they will refuse this fundraising event. Haha. I also have many business friends in the capital. When I return, I will contact them immediately. Our Jing family has many business friends in Jiangnan. But the donation gathering is in 3 days. I'm afraid there won't be enough time. At this moment, Zheng Qianjun frowned and spoke. The Zheng family's Misty Rain Villa was famous for its influence in both the underworld and the underworld of Jiangnan. In the business world of Jiangnan, the Zheng family was a force to be reckoned with. As long as Zheng Qianjuan's father, Zheng Yinhong, made a call, more than half of the merchants in Jiangnan would respond. However, Jiangnan was nearly 1,000 miles away from Chang'an. No matter how influential Zheng Yinhong was in Jiangnan, it was impossible for him to get the merchants of Jiangnan to come all the way to Chang'an for donations. Moreover, even if they were willing to come, they wouldn't be able to make it in time for the donation ceremony in 3 days. Young Lord Zheng's worries are not without reason. Jiangnan is a long way from Chang'an. I'm afraid we won't be able to make it in time. Lin Wenyuan nodded. He looked at Zheng Qianjun and said, Time is tight. We can only mobilize the merchants near the capital to raise a batch of military funds. We can show Marquis, the imperial court, and His Majesty the power of us merchants. Think about it, why would His Majesty agree to Marquis's request to gather merchants to raise military funds for the country? This is a great opportunity for us. Scholars, farmers, workers, and merchants, we merchants have been looked down upon for hundreds of years. Everyone says that we only care about profit. But this time, when we raise military funds for the country, we want the world to see that we merchants are not petty people who only care about profit. We care more about righteousness, about the country's righteousness. After hearing Lin Wenyuan's words, Chao Wendong's eyes lit up. He hurriedly said, Boss Lin's words have hit the nail on the head. Scholars, farmers, workers, and merchants, we merchants have been prejudiced by the world for hundreds of years. If we want others to think highly of us, we have to unite ourselves and do things that others think highly of us. This time, when we raise military funds for the country, it is a good opportunity for us merchants to show our righteousness. I don't care about others, but the Chow family will donate no less than 20,000 strings of cash. As the largest silk and cloth merchant in the capital, Chow Wendong had always been working hard to establish a chamber of commerce to raise the status of merchant. However, his ability and influence were limited. He could only have the will but not the strength. Last year, after many twists and turns, Chow Wendong finally managed to hitch a ride with Li Zixuan and the Yan Huang Chamber of Commerce. In this year, he had watched the Chamber of Commerce expand bit by bit. The status of the members of the Chamber of Commerce had also gradually increased. This point might not be obvious in the Great Tang, but it was absolutely obvious in Lantian County. This was because Li Zixuan had implemented a complete set of protection systems for merchants in Lantian County. There was a special department of commerce to deal with disputes related to merchants. In Lantian County, the status of merchants was no longer at the lowest level of society. Everyone was equal. Lin Wenyuan's words made Chow Wendong realize that this matter of raising military funds was a good opportunity for merchants to increase their influence. Of course, putting this aside, if merchants wanted to do business peacefully, they needed a stable environment. And the prerequisite for this stable environment was that the Great Tang had to win the war with the Turks. Otherwise, not to mention doing business in this chaotic world, it would be difficult for ordinary people to even survive. Due to these reasons, Chow Wendong was willing to put in a lot of money to support Li Zixuan's military fund-raising conference. Good. Boss Chow is indeed very bold. Lin Wenyuan's face lit up as he said, Boss Chow is so righteous, I admire you. Here, I will make it clear to everyone. For this military fundraising, I will donate no less than 20,000 strings of cash. Of course, this is only this Lin's guarantee to all of you. As for how much you and other business friends can donate, Marquis and this Lin will not force you. Everyone should do what they can. No matter how much you donate, it's still a token of our sincerity. Good. Everyone inwardly breathed a sigh of relief. After all, although everyone present had some wealth, not everyone could casually throw out 20,000 strings of cash like Chow Wendong and Lin Wenyuan. Strictly speaking, whether it was Chow Wendong or Lin Wenyuan, neither of them was so rich that they didn't care about 20,000 strings of cash. Taking out so much money all at once would still cause them some heartache. The reason they were willing to part with it was because they could see the big picture. So when they heard that Chow Wendong was going to donate 20,000 strings of cash, some people couldn't help but worry. Would this fund-raising conference turn into a donation contest? Would one person donate more than the other? Lin Wenyuan's last sentence could be considered to have temporarily put everyone at ease. Alright. It's getting late, and I've finished what Marquis asked of me. I'll have to trouble everyone to start contacting your friends in the capital today and publicize the fund-raising conference in 3 days. Seeing that everything was over, Lin Wenyuan stood up. Good. Then let's go and contact them. Everyone stood up, clasped their hands and bade farewell. The secret meeting of the Flaming Yellow Chamber of Commerce ended just like that. Soldiers, listen to my command. 25 people in a row, get into formation. Lin Wenyuan brought the members of the Flaming Yellow Chamber of Commerce to discuss the issue of raising military funds. In the Black Armored Armies camp, where the Wu Battalion was training, Li Zixuan and Sun Jiping were organizing the soldiers to carry out cavalry charging training. According to the first edition of the heavy cavalry drill compiled by Li Zixuan, starting from 3 o'clock in the afternoon, there would be 3 hours of cavalry charging training. All the soldiers would put on their helmets and armor, and their horses would put on their armor. They would practice charging techniques, and they would follow every order in a uniform manner. At this moment, Sun Jiping gave the order, and the 100 soldiers of the Wu battalion immediately mounted their horses. 25 people in a row, and they quickly formed a horizontal line of heavy cavalry. There was a reason why they used a horizontal line instead of a column. This was because charging in a horizontal line could maximize the impact of the heavy cavalry. When 3 or 4 rows of heavy cavalry charged at the enemy at the same time, the enemy's solid defensive formation would quickly collapse. The cavalry could then scatter and turn to the side, and then regroup behind the other cavalry lines. They would then attack the next round of charging from the front line. Through this method, they could create a strong impact and continuously deplete the enemy's energy. Before Napoleon, the horizontal line was the basic form of all cavalry charging. In the entire 8th century, there was only one situation where the cavalry would charge in a column when breaking through the enemy's encirclement. Target: the wooden stakes 3,000 feet away charge. In just a few breaths of time, the 100 heavy cavalry soldiers were quickly assembled. Sun Jiping nodded his head in satisfaction. This proved that their training yesterday was not in vain. Immediately, he pulled out the long sword at his waist, pointed at the rows of wooden stakes 3,000 feet away, and gave the order loudly. "Kill!" The soldiers did not respond loudly. Instead, they shouted the word "kill" in unison. The 100 cavalry soldiers began to charge at a fixed speed towards the wooden stakes in front of them. 1 2 1 2 1. The essence of the heavy cavalry charging tactics was that every cavalryman had to maintain a uniform movement, and every warhorse had to maintain the same pace. Only in this way could the heavy cavalry exert the most powerful impact and give the enemy the greatest visual and auditory impact. Therefore, Sun Jiping also got on his horse at this time and moved forward with the first group of soldiers of the Wu battalion. At the same time, he also shouted the slogan that Li Zichuan taught him to control the marching rhythm of the soldiers. Li Zichuan also made detailed rules about the marching rhythm of the heavy cavalry charging in a horizontal line in the heavy cavalry drill manual. At the beginning, the horizontal line should start moving as slowly as possible. This was to accumulate momentum. Then, it would turn into a fast trot. When they were about 300 meters away from the enemy, they would gradually increase their speed and turn into a fast trot. When they were about 20 to 30 meters away from the enemy, they would move forward at full speed. "Stop!" Li Zichuan, who was observing from the side, suddenly shouted when the first group of soldiers moved 20 to 30 feet away. "Shh!" Thump! 100 cavalrymen immediately reined in their horses. The horses' hooves landed on the ground and made a series of uniform sounds. Li Zichuan rode forward and said sternly, "First row, 5th and 12th from the left. Second row, 3rd from the left. Third row, 10th from the left. Fourth row, 7th, 8th, and 21st from the left. Everyone that I just called out, step forward." Hearing Li Zichuan's unfriendly tone, everyone was silent for a moment. The soldiers that were called out hesitated for a moment, then they all moved to the side of the square formation and waited in fear for Li Zichuan's punishment. Li Zichuan looked at this annoying person indifferently and then said loudly, "The 7 of you were either half a step faster or half a step slower. You can't keep the same pace as the others. You guys stand aside and watch. The rest of you, return to your original positions and rearrange the formation." "Yes." The rest of the soldiers cupped their fists and answered. Immediately after, the front troops turned to the back and quickly returned to their original positions. At this moment, Li Zichuan said in a deep voice, "Field Officer Sun, you will ride at the front and lead the team. The rest of you will follow behind Field Officer Sunday. Control your warhorses well and maintain the same pace as Field Officer Sunday. If there are any faster or slower horses, I will pull them out and let you all train individually." "Yes, General," Sun Jiping responded and rode to the front of the cavalrymen. Since Li Zichuan was helping him supervise from behind, all he needed to do was to lead the team from the front. The rest of the soldiers didn't expect Li Zishuan to be so strict that they couldn't even move their horses half a step faster or slower. For a moment, everyone was on full alert because if they wanted to meet Li Zishuan's requirements, they had to maintain a high level of concentration. This was not only a test of their individual reaction speed, but also their ability to control their horses. There was no room for slacking off. "Everyone, listen to my order and charge with me." Sun Jiping pulled out his long sword and pointed it at the wooden pole in front of him again, and ordered loudly. Neat and uniform. This was called neat and uniform. The momentum of the cavalrymen charging team was slowly accumulating. Ready to go. Da. When they were about 300 feet away from the wooden pole, Sun Jiping's horse suddenly sped up. After a short adjustment of pace, the soldiers at the back quickly caught up with Sun Jiping's rhythm. The sound of horse hooves became neat and uniform again, and as they moved forward, the sound of horse hooves became faster and faster, just like the war drums during a battle. The drumbeats became more and more frequent, to the extent that everyone had an illusion that their heartbeats were also getting faster and faster. Da. When they were about 15 feet away from the wooden pole, the speed of the cavalrymen finally reached the maximum. However, Li Zishuan did not give the order to stop, so Sun Jiping naturally did not dare to give the order to stop. However, the hundreds of soldiers at the back were about to hit the wooden pole. If they did not stop now, they would definitely be thrown off their horses. For a moment, the originally neat and uniform troop finally had some messy sounds of horse hooves, and the formation of the cavalrymen also became a little messy. Why is Commander Li not giving the order to stop? At this speed, it will be too late to stop. Not only the cavalrymen on the field, but the other black armored army soldiers who were watching from the side were also secretly anxious. Li Zishuan's eyes were cold, and he did not say a word. He had no intention of stopping the cavalrymen at all. This was because he was very dissatisfied with the chaos that appeared in the cavalry charging team just now. In his opinion, the most important thing in a cavalry charging team was to be neat and uniform. If the commander did not give the order to stop, no one would listen. Even if there was a bottomless abyss in front of them, they still could not stop. Chapter 1763. 150 zhang, 100 zhang, 80 zhang, 70 zhang, 60 zhang. The cavalry charged forward at a very fast speed. Seeing that they were getting closer and closer to the wooden piles, Li Zishuan still didn't give the order to stop the charge. The other soldiers of the Wu battalion who were watching the battle from the side all had their hearts in their throat. They didn't understand why Li Zishuan still didn't give the order. Did he forget to give the order, or was he doing it on purpose? The cavalry that was charging forward with Sun Jiping was even more flustered. In such a short distance and at such a fast speed, if they didn't stop and hit the wooden pole, both men and horses would be injured. At this moment, when they were only 50 feet away from the wooden pole, someone finally couldn't hold it in any longer. Nay! 4 to 5 soldiers in the first row pulled the reins lightly, trying to slow down their horses. But when they slowed down, the people behind them didn't expect it. After all, everyone had time to react. When the soldiers at the back realized that the people in front of them were slowing down, it was already too late for them to slow down their horses. Purng! Ouch! When the rear army collided with the front army, the formation of the 4 or 5 soldiers in the first row who had slowed down at the beginning was thrown into disarray. They even had the tendency to affect the other troops around them. In just a few breaths, 20 to 30 soldiers were knocked off their feet. Sun Jiping of course heard the commotion behind him, but he didn't have time to care about it, because he was only 30 zhang away from the wooden stakes in front of him. At this time, even if Li Zishuan gave the order to stop charging, it was already too late. The only thing he could do was to control his posture and try his best to avoid getting hurt when the horses hit the wooden stakes later. In the blink of an eye. The distance of 40 to 50 zhang was just a blink of an eye for Sun Jiping and the others with the speed of their horses. Pring pring pung. Nay nay. Ouch. Under Sun Jiping's lead charge, more than 60 soldiers of the Wu battalion rammed into the wooden stakes in front of them. For a moment, people and horses were sent flying, and screams could be heard everywhere. The screams came from both the horses and the soldiers. But luckily, the horses were wearing square steel horse armor, and the soldiers were wearing vanadium steel plate armor. 15 zhang, 10 zhang, 8 zhang, 7 zhang, 6 zhang. The cavalry assault team was moving forward at an extremely fast speed. They were getting closer and closer to the wooden piles in front of them, but Li Zishuan still didn't give the order to stop. The other soldiers of the Wu battalion, who were watching from the side, all had their hearts in their throat. They didn't understand why Li Zishuan still didn't give the order. Did he forget to give the order, or was he doing it on purpose? The cavalry that was charging forward with Sun Jiping was even more flustered. In such a short distance and at such a fast speed, if they didn't stop and hit the wooden pole, both men and horses would be injured. At this moment, when they were only 5 feet away from the wooden pole, someone finally couldn't hold it in any longer. Whoosh! There were 4 or 5 soldiers in the first row who gently pulled on the reins, trying to slow down their horses. However, the moment they slowed down, the people behind them were not prepared. After all, everyone had time to react. By the time the soldiers at the back realized that the people in front were slowing down, it was already too late for them to slow down their horses. Bang! Ouch! The soldiers at the back bumped into the soldiers at the front. The formation of those 4 or 5 soldiers in the first row who slowed down at the beginning was instantly messed up. They even had the tendency to affect the other formations around them. In just a few breaths, 20 to 30 soldiers were knocked over. Of course, Sun Jiping heard the commotion behind him, but he didn't have the time to care about it, because he was only 3 feet away from the wooden piles in front of him. At this moment, even if Li Zishuan gave the order to stop charging, it was already too late. The only thing he could do was to control his posture and try his best to avoid getting injured when the horses hit the wooden piles later. It was too late to say, but in the blink of an eye. The distance of 4 to 5 feet was just a blink of an eye for Sun Jiping and the others with their current speed. Bang bang bang. Nay nay. Ouch. Under Sun Jiping's leading the charge, more than 60 soldiers of the Wu battalion crashed into the wooden piles in front of them. For a moment, people and horses were all sent flying, and screams could be heard everywhere. The screams came from both the horses and the soldiers. Fortunately, the horses were wearing square steel horse armor, and the soldiers were wearing vanadium steel plate armor. Chapter 1764. After saying that, Li Zishuan looked at Sun Jiping again and instructed in a deep voice, "Field Officer Sun, according to my standards just now, form a team of 100 people. Pick out those who don't meet the requirements and do individual training later. I only have one requirement, and that is to follow orders and be uniform. As for those who are not up for battle, they will be punished according to the military rules." "Yes, sir." Sun Jiping immediately stepped forward and cupped his fist. "All right. You are clear on the way to charge. I will leave the rest of the training to you. You must make sure that they are up to standard today." Li Zishuan patted Sun Jiping's shoulder and said. He was in the army and was only in charge of the training plan. He had to rely on the captains of each battalion to lead the troop. There was no need for him to do everything personally. "Yes, sir." Sun Jiping cupped his fist. 6th Battalion, charge. Da 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 da. 12121. In the afternoon, on the drill ground of the Black Armored Army's camp, the soldiers of the Wu Battalion became the most eye-catching Zai. Under Sun Jiping's command, the cavalrymen charged towards a row of wooden stakes without any fear of death. Of course, they didn't have to hit the wooden stakes every time they charged. Most of the time, Sun Jiping would give the command to stop when they were close to the wooden stakes. As for hitting the wooden stakes, it was just a random situation. After all, every time they hit the wooden stakes, there would be injuries to the horses and soldiers. This was just daily training and not on the battlefield. The black armored army couldn't accept such a huge loss. After saying that, Li Zixuan looked at Sun Jiping again and instructed in a deep voice, "Field Officer Sun, according to my standards just now, form a team of 100 people. Pick out those who don't meet the requirements and do individual training later. I only have one requirement, and that is to follow orders and be uniform. As for those who are not up for battle, they will be punished according to the military rules." "Yes, sir." Sun Jiping immediately stepped forward and cupped his fist. "All right. You are clear on the way to charge. I will leave the rest of the training to you. You must make sure that they are up to standard today." Li Zixuan patted Sun Jiping's shoulder and said. He had joined the army, so he was only responsible for customizing the drill plan. As for the specific people who would lead the troops and carry them out, he still had to rely on the captains of each battalion. There was no need for him to personally attend to everything. This general obeys. Sun Jiping cupped his fists and said, "6 squad, charge. Da, 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 da. 121, 121. In the afternoon, on the drill ground of the Black Armored Army's camp, the soldiers of the Wu Battalion became the most eye-catching Zai. Under Sun Jiping's command, the cavalrymen charged towards a row of wooden stakes, without fear of death, again and again. Of course, they did not have to hit the wooden poles every time they charged. Most of the time, Sun Jiping would give the order to stop when the team was close to the wooden poles. As for hitting the wooden poles, it was just a random situation. After all, with every collision, there would be injuries to the horses and soldiers. And this was just training and not on the battlefield. The black armored troops could not accept such a huge loss. After that, Li Zixuan looked at Sun Jiping and said in a deep voice, "Captain Sun, according to my standards just now, 100 men in a battalion. Pick out those who do not meet the requirements and have them undergo individual training. I only have one requirement, and that is to follow orders and be uniform. As for those who are timid or not, they will be punished according to the crime of being afraid of war in the military rules." This general obeys. Sun Jiping immediately stepped forward and cupped his fists. "All right. Now that you are clear about the way of charging, I will leave the rest of the training to you. Today you must train them well." Li Zixuan patted Sun Jiping's shoulder and said. He had joined the army, so he was only responsible for customizing the drill plan. As for the specific people who would lead the troops and carry them out, he still had to rely on the captains of each battalion. There was no need for him to personally attend to everything. This general obeys. Sun Jiping cupped his fists and said, "6 squad, charge. Da, 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 da. 12121. In the afternoon, on the drill ground of the Black Armored Army's camp, the soldiers of the Wu Battalion became the most eye-catching Zai. Under Sun Jiping's command, the cavalrymen charged towards a row of wooden stakes, without fear of death, again and again. Of course, they did not have to hit the wooden poles every time they charged. Most of the time, Sun Jiping would give the command to stop when the cavalrymen were about to hit the wooden poles. As for hitting the wooden poles, it was just a random situation. After all, every time they hit the wooden poles, there would be injuries to the horses and soldiers. And this was just daily training and not on the battlefield. The Black Armored Army could not accept such a huge loss. After that, Li Zixuan looked at Sun Jiping again and said in a deep voice, "Captain Sun, according to my standards just now, 100 men in a battalion. Pick out those who do not meet the requirements and have them undergo individual training. I only have one requirement, and that is to follow orders and be uniform. As for those who are timid or not, they will be punished according to the crime of being afraid of war in the military rules. This general obeys. Sun Jiping immediately stepped forward and cupped his fists. That's enough. You are already clear on the way to charge the cavalrymen. I will leave the rest of the training to you. Today, you must make sure that they are trained properly. Li Zishuan patted Sun Jiping's shoulder and said. He was in the army and was only in charge of customizing the training plan. As for the people who would lead the troops, he still had to rely on the captains of each battalion. There was no need for him to do everything personally. This general obeys. Sun Jiping cupped his fists and replied. 6th Battalion, charge. Duh, 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 duh. 12121. In the afternoon, on the drill ground of the Black Armored Army's camp, the soldiers of the Wu Battalion became the most eye-catching Zai. Under Sun Jiping's command, the cavalrymen charged towards a row of wooden stakes, without fear of death, again and again. Of course, they didn't have to hit the wooden poles every time they charged. Most of the time, Sun Jiping would give the command to stop when the cavalrymen were close to the wooden poles. As for hitting the wooden poles, it was just a random situation. After all, every time they hit the wooden poles, there would be horses and soldiers getting injured. This was just daily training and not on the battlefield. The Black Armored Army couldn't afford to lose so many soldiers. After that, Li Zishuan looked at Sun Jiping again and said in a deep voice, Captain Sun, according to my standards just now, 100 men in a battalion. Pick out those who don't meet the requirements and do individual training later. I only have one requirement, and that is to follow orders and be uniform. As for those who are timid or not, they will be punished according to the crime of being afraid of war in the military rules. This general obeys. Sun Jiping immediately stepped forward and cupped his fist. That's enough. You are already clear on the way to charge the cavalrymen. The rest of the training will be left to you. Today, you must make sure that they are trained properly. Li Zishuan patted Sun Jiping's shoulder and said. He had joined the army and was only responsible for the preparation of the training plan. As for the people who would lead the troops, he still had to rely on the captains of each battalion. There was no need for him to do everything personally. This general obeys. Sun Jiping cupped his fists and replied. 6th Battalion, charge. Duh, 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 duh. 12121. In the afternoon, on the drill ground of the Black Armored Army's camp, the soldiers of the Wu Battalion became the most eye-catching Zai. Under Sun Jiping's command, the cavalrymen charged towards a row of wooden stakes, without fear of death, again and again. Of course, they didn't have to hit the wooden poles every time they charged. Most of the time, Sun Jiping would give the command to stop when the cavalrymen were close to the wooden poles. As for hitting the wooden poles, it was just a random situation. After all, every time they hit the wooden poles, there would be horses and soldiers getting injured. This was just daily training and not on the battlefield. The Black Armored Army couldn't afford to lose so many soldiers. After that, Li Zishuan looked at Sun Jiping again and said in a deep voice, Captain Sun, according to my standards just now, 100 men in a battalion. Pick out those who don't meet the requirements and do individual training later. I only have one requirement, and that is to follow orders and be uniform. As for those who are timid or not, they will be punished according to the crime of being afraid of war in the military rules. This general obeys. Sun Jiping cupped his fists and replied immediately. That's enough. You already know how to charge the cavalrymen. I will leave the rest of the training to you. Today you must train them well. Li Zishuan patted Sun Jiping's shoulder and said. He had joined the army and was only responsible for the preparation of the training plan. As for the people who would lead the troops, he still had to rely on the captains of each battalion. There was no need for him to do everything personally. This general obeys. Sun Jiping cupped his fists and replied. 6th Battalion, charge. Duh, 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 duh. 12121. In the afternoon, on the drill ground of the Black Armored Army's camp, the soldiers of the Wu Battalion became the most eye-catching Zai. Under Sun Jiping's orders, the cavalrymen charged towards a row of wooden stakes again and again without any fear of death. Of course, they didn't have to hit the wooden stakes every time they charged. Most of the time, Sun Jiping would give the order to stop when they were about to hit the wooden stakes. As for hitting the wooden stakes, it was just a random situation. After all, every time they hit the wooden stakes, there would be injuries to the horses and soldiers. And this was just daily training and not on the battlefield. The Black Armored Army couldn't accept so many losses. After that, Li Zishuan looked at Sun Jiping again and said in a deep voice, "Captain Sun, according to my standards just now, 100 men in a battalion. Pick out those who don't meet the requirements and do individual training later. I only have one requirement, and that is to follow orders and be uniform. As for those who are timid or not, they will be punished according to the crime of being afraid of war in the military rules." This general obeys. Sun Jiping cupped his fists and replied immediately, "That's enough. You are already clear on the way to charge the cavalrymen. I will leave the rest of the training to you. Today, you must make sure that they are trained properly." Li Zishuan patted Sun Jiping's shoulder and said, he was in the army and was only in charge of customizing the training plan. As for the people who would lead the troops, he still had to rely on the captains of each battalion. There was no need for him to do everything personally. This general obeys. Sun Jiping cupped his fists and replied, "6th Battalion, charge. Da 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 da. 12121. In the afternoon, on the drill ground of the Black Armored Army's camp, the soldiers of the Wu Battalion became the most eye-catching Zai. Under Sun Jiping's orders, the cavalrymen charged towards a row of wooden stakes again and again without any fear of death. Of course, they didn't have to hit the wooden stakes every time they charged. Most of the time, Sun Jiping would give the order to stop when they were about to hit the wooden stakes. As for hitting the wooden stakes, it was just a random situation. After all, every time they hit the wooden stakes, there would be injuries to the horses and soldiers. And this was just daily training and not on the battlefield. The Black Armored Army couldn't accept such a huge loss. After saying that, Li Zishuan looked at Sun Jiping again and said in a deep voice, "Captain Sun, according to my standards just now, 100 men in a battalion. Pick out those who don't meet the requirements and do individual training later. I only have one request, and that is to follow orders and be uniform. As for those who are timid or not, they will be punished according to the crime of being afraid of war in the military rules." This general obeys. Sun Jiping cupped his fists and replied immediately, "That's enough. You are already clear on the way to charge the cavalrymen. The rest of the training will be left to you. Today, you must make sure that they are trained properly." Li Zishuan patted Sun Jiping's shoulder and said, he had joined the army and was only in charge of customizing the training plan. As for the specific people who would lead the troops, he still had to rely on the captains of each battalion. There was no need for him to do everything personally. This general obeys. Sun Jiping cupped his fists and replied, "6th Battalion, charge. Da 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 da. 12121. In the afternoon, on the drill ground of the Black Armored Army's camp, the soldiers of the Wu Battalion became the most eye-catching Zai. Under Sun Jiping's command, the cavalrymen charged towards a row of wooden stakes without any fear of death. Of course, they didn't have to hit the wooden stakes every time they charged. Most of the time, Sun Jiping would give the order to stop when they were about to hit the wooden stakes. As for hitting the wooden stakes, it was just a random situation. After all, every time they hit the wooden stakes, there would be injuries to the horses and soldiers. And this was just daily training and not on the battlefield. The Black Armored Army couldn't accept such a huge loss. After that, Li Zixuan looked at Sun Jiping again and said in a deep voice, "Captain Sun, according to my standards just now, 100 men in a battalion. Pick out those who don't meet the requirements and do individual training later. I only have one requirement, and that is to follow orders and be uniform. As for those who are timid or not, they will be punished according to the crime of being timid in the military rules." This general obeys. Sun Jiping cupped his fists and replied immediately, "That's enough. You already know how to charge the cavalrymen. I'll leave the rest of the training to you. Today you must train them well." Li Zixuan patted Sun Jiping's shoulder and said. He had joined the army and was only in charge of customizing the training plan. As for the specific people who would lead the troops, he still had to rely on the captains of each battalion. There was no need for him to do everything personally. This general obeys. Sun Jiping cupped his fists and replied, "6th Battalion, charge. Da 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 da. 12121." In the afternoon, on the drill ground of the Black Armored Army's camp, the soldiers of the Wu Battalion became the most eye-catching Zai. Under Sun Jiping's orders, the cavalrymen charged towards a row of wooden stakes again and again without any fear of death. Of course, they didn't have to hit the wooden stakes every time they charged. Most of the time, Sun Jiping would give the order to stop when they were about to hit the wooden stake. As for hitting the wooden stakes, it was just a random situation. After all, every time they hit the wooden stakes, there would be injuries to the horses and soldiers. This was just daily training and not on the battlefield. The Black Armored Army couldn't accept such a huge loss. After that, Li Zixuan looked at Sun Jiping again and said in a deep voice, "Captain Sun, according to my standards just now, 100 men in a battalion. Pick out those who don't meet the requirements and do individual training later. I only have one requirement, and that is to follow orders and be uniform. As for those who are timid or not, they will be punished according to the crime of being timid in the military rules." This general obeys. Sun Jiping cupped his fists and replied immediately, "That's enough. You are already clear on the way to charge the cavalrymen. I will leave the rest of the training to you. Today you must make sure that they are trained properly." Li Zixuan patted Sun Jiping's shoulder and said. He was in the army and was only in charge of customizing the training plan. As for the people who would lead the troops, he still had to rely on the captains of each battalion. There was no need for him to do everything personally. This general obeys. Sun Jiping cupped his fists and replied, "6th Battalion, charge. Da 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 da. 12121." In the afternoon, on the drill ground of the Black Armored Army's camp, the soldiers of the Wu Battalion became the most eye-catching Zai. Under Sun Jiping's orders, the cavalrymen charged towards a row of wooden stakes again and again without any fear of death. Of course, they didn't have to hit the wooden stakes every time they charged. Most of the time, Sun Jiping would give the order to stop when they were about to hit the wooden stake. As for hitting the wooden stakes, it was just a random situation. After all, every time they hit the wooden stakes, there would be injuries to the horses and soldiers. This was just daily training and not on the battlefield. The Black Armored Army couldn't accept such a huge loss. Chapter 1765. Reporting to the general, it is said that the Wu Battalion lost more than 10 war horses during the afternoon training, and 40 to 50 soldiers were slightly injured. At night, the day's training ended, and the soldiers had their dinner. At this time, Zhang Kongyan quietly came to Qiu Xingong's tent and bowed to him with cupped fist. The Black Armored Army was now in a closed training period. During this period, not only were the ordinary soldiers not allowed to go out, even the high-ranking officers had to stay in the camp day and night. Unless the emperor summoned them or there was an important court meeting, even Duan Zhixuan was not allowed to leave the camp. What? Training can cause the loss of war horses and soldiers? What are they training for? Qiu Xingong frowned and asked. He was puzzled. In the afternoon, he spent most of his time in his tent going through official documents. Previously, he was mainly in charge of the daily training of the Black Armored Troop. However, after Li Zixuan came, he stole his job. Thus, his position as the second-in-command of the Black Armored Troops was changed to a civilian position. Some of the official documents, rations, and logistics were all handed over to him, so he was still very busy every day. In his opinion, the daily training in the camp would at most cause the soldiers to fall off their horses and get some scratches. How could there be a situation where both the soldiers and the horses were injured? This was not going to the front line to fight a war, nor was it going into the mountains to hunt. Replying to the general, the Wu Battalion was mainly doing cavalry training in the afternoon. It is said that when the soldiers in the Wu Battalion were about to reach the obstacles, Li Zixuan and Sun Jiping did not give the order to stop. So many of the soldiers and their horses crashed into the wooden stake. That was why there were so many casualties. Zhang Kongyan replied with a smile. After that, he bowed to Qiu Xingong and said with a flattering face, "Haha." Although the details of the competition between the Wu Battalion and the 2nd Battalion in 10 days is not confirmed yet, but the Wu Battalion has suffered casualties before the competition. To us, this is really a good thing. The 2nd Battalion will definitely win this competition, so I congratulate the general in advance. Qiu Xingong's face was filled with astonishment at first, but soon after, the corners of his mouth curled up into an arc. Everyone could tell that he was rejoicing in other people's misfortune. After a moment, the old man suddenly straightened his face and said, "Why are you congratulating me? If you want to congratulate someone, you should congratulate Sun Tao. He is the commander of the 2nd Battalion." Replying to the general, the Wu Battalion's training in the afternoon lost more than 10 war horses, and 40 to 50 soldiers suffered minor injuries. At night, the day's training ended, and the soldiers had their dinner. At this time, Zhang Kongyan quietly came to Qiu Xingong's tent and bowed to him with cupped fist. The Black Armored Troops were currently in a closed training period. During this period, not only were the ordinary soldiers not allowed to leave, even the high-ranking officers had to stay in the barracks day and night. Unless the emperor summoned them or there was an important court meeting, even Duan Zixuan was not allowed to leave the barracks. What? Losing war horses and soldiers? What training are they training? Qiu Xingong furrowed his brows. He was puzzled and asked. In the afternoon, he spent most of his time in his tent going through official documents. Previously, he was mainly in charge of the daily training of the Black Armored Troop. However, after Li Zixuan came, he stole his job. Thus, his position as the second-in-command of the Black Armored Troops was changed to a civilian position. Some of the official documents, rations, and logistics were all handed over to him, so he was still very busy every day. In his opinion, the daily training in the camp would at most cause the soldiers to fall off their horses and get some scratches. How could there be a situation where both the soldiers and the horses were injured? This was not going to the front lines to fight a war, nor was it going into the mountains to hunt. Replying to the general, the Wu Battalion's training in the afternoon was mainly for cavalry charging. It is said that when the soldiers in the Wu Battalion were about to reach the obstacles, Li Zixuan and Sun Jiping did not give the order to stop. So many of the soldiers and their horses crashed into the wooden stake. That was why there were so many casualties. Zhang Kongyan replied with a smile. After that, he bowed to Qiu Xingong and said with a flattering face, "Haha." Although the details of the competition between the Wu Battalion and the 2nd Battalion in 10 days have not been confirmed, but the fact that the Wu Battalion has lost soldiers before the competition, to us, it is really a joyous matter. The 2nd Battalion will definitely win this competition. I congratulate the general in advance. Qiu Xingong's face was filled with astonishment at first, but soon after, the corners of his mouth curled up into an arc. Everyone could tell that he was rejoicing in other people's misfortune. After a moment, the old man suddenly straightened his face and said, "Why are you congratulating this old man? If you want to congratulate someone, you should congratulate Sun Tao. He is the commander of the 2nd Battalion." Chapter 1766. Hey! These bastards dare to speak ill of Little Xian behind your back. Just you wait, Little Xian. Watch how I, Old Qing, teach them a lesson. Outside the Wu Battalion's tent, Li Zishuan and Qing Chumo both heard what the soldiers were saying. Qing Chumo's face darkened as he rolled up his sleeves, only to find that he had come out with his upper body bare. He didn't have any sleeves at all. Then, he slapped his head in exasperation and rushed towards the tent in front of them. Although he was also very tired from the training these past 2 days, and if it was someone else who joined the army, he, Qing Chumo, would definitely be cursing behind their back. But the person who joined the army was Li Zishuan, his brother. How could he allow others to speak ill of his brother behind his back? Obviously, this was a typical case of siding with family over reason. If he chose someone, he would protect him even if he was condemned by everyone. Stop! Li Zishuan grabbed Qing Chumo and tried to dissuade him. Chumo, don't be rash. This is the Black Armored Army's camp, not Chang'an City. It's against the military rules to fight in private. But they, Qing Chumo pointed to the tent and anxiously stamped his feet. No buts. They are talking about me, not you. Besides, I think what they said makes sense. Li Zishuan interrupted Qing Chumo and said lightly, "Calm down, Commander. Most of the soldiers are rough men in the army. They speak without thinking. Plus, they are simple-minded and can't understand your good intentions. Please calm your anger, Commander." Sun Jiping hurriedly stepped forward and cupped his fists towards Li Zishuan. Li Zishuan was expressionless. It was hard to tell whether he was happy or angry. After a moment of silence, he suddenly smiled and helped Sun Jiping up. "Jiping, why do you say that? Am I so petty in your eyes?" "I wouldn't dare." Sun Jiping quickly bowed. "Haha, that's enough. I'm just teasing you. Let's go in and take a look." Li Zishuan patted Sun Jiping's shoulder and walked towards the tent. "Squad leader, I think we have to separate things. It's true that the Marquis of Yong is a good official who has helped many people, but it doesn't mean that he's a good soldier. If we continue to train like this, I reckon that before we even enter the battlefield, we will already be covered in injuries. Why don't you go and talk to Commandant Sun?" "Shut up. Ding Dolly, you brat, aren't you tired after a whole day of training?" He quickly went to bed. He still had to continue training tomorrow. "If you're not sleepy, then get on the ground and do 100 push-ups before you sleep." Yes. Who said I wasn't sleepy? He was going to sleep now. But the push-ups that Li Kanjun made us do are too torturous. My arms have been sore for the past 2 days. If I don't make your arms sore, how can I prove that my new training method is effective? Just as the soldiers in the tent were discussing softly, Li Zishuan entered the tent and continued the soldier named Ding Dolly's words with a smile. "It's Kanjun Li." Everyone in the tent was taken aback. They hurriedly got up from their beds and staggered toward Li Zishuan, then saluted him with a fist salute. "Greetings, Kanjun." Nobody expected Li Zishuan to visit their camp in the middle of the night. They were anxious, especially a big man with a scar on his face. He was trembling and had a layer of cold sweat on his forehead. He dared not look at Li Zishuan at all. "It's not training time now, so you don't have to be so courteous." Li Zishuan raised his hands and said to everyone. The tent wasn't spacious, and each tent had 10 people living in it. The beds inside took up about 70 to 80% of the space in the tent. When Li Zishuan and his group walked in, it seemed even more crowded. "Thank you, Kanjun." Everyone saluted with a fist salute and then stood up straight. "You are Ding Dolly, right? It was precisely because the tent was small that Li Zixuan quickly noticed the strange expression on the scarred man's face. He walked forward and asked with a smile. Reporting to Kanjun, I am Ding Dali. Seeing that Li Zixuan recognized him, Ding Dali suddenly trembled and almost knelt down in front of Li Zixuan. Just now, he was still worried that Li Zixuan might not have heard what he said before. He still had a sliver of hope in his heart, but at this moment, Li Zixuan directly recognized him from among the 10 people. This completely shattered his wishful thinking. He thought to himself, Li Zixuan must have heard those words outside the tent, and now he's here to settle accounts. The Ding Dali now was completely different from the Ding Dali who dared to talk back to the heavens and the earth. Li Zixuan quietly looked at the person in front of him and didn't immediately speak. This silent atmosphere gave Ding Dali endless pressure, causing him to be unable to breathe for a moment. At this moment, he really wanted to slap himself twice. Who asked him to talk so much behind his back? Who asked him to talk so much behind his back? With Li Zixuan's current position in the imperial court, if he wanted to kill him, it would be as easy as killing an ant. Thinking of this, Ding Dali's back was also wet with sweat. Why is there so much sweat on your face? This Kanjun only heard that you were injured. Could it be that you're sick? Li Zixuan patted Sun Dali's shoulder and asked with a face full of concern. No, your subordinate is not sick. Perhaps it's because the weather is too hot. Yes, it's because the weather is too hot. Ding Dali quickly raised his arm and wiped the cold sweat on his forehead as he denied it. That's good. Li Zixuan nodded, then pointed at the couch in front of him and said, Go and sit down. This Kanjun will take a look at your injuries. Ah! Ding Dali was stunned when he heard this and did not react for a long time. Could it be that Li Zixuan did not come to find trouble with him? How could this be? What This Kanjun wants to treat your injuries. What are you still standing there for? Sun Jiping, who was at the side, could not stand it anymore. He slapped Ding Dali's head and reprimanded him in a bad mood. How could I trouble Kanjun? Your subordinate is only suffering from minor injuries. Moreover, the military doctor has already bandaged this subordinate's injuries. I dare not trouble Kanjun. Ding Dali finally came back to his senses. He quickly waved his hand at Li Zixuan and rejected him. Li Zixuan recognized this nameless soldier the moment he came in and immediately came over to take a look at his injuries. He had reason to suspect that Li Zixuan had heard those words outside the tent and came in to take the opportunity to punish him in the name of treating his injuries. It was not impossible for him to directly lose an arm or break a leg. It had to be said that although this fellow's appearance was boorish, his heart was full of tricks. Not to mention anything else, even if Li Zixuan wanted to take revenge on him, there were tens of thousands of ways. Why did he have to go through so much trouble? Sit down. This Kanjun is just taking a look. Moreover, don't forget that other than martial arts, this Kanjun also knows medical skills. Li Zixuan would never have thought that this man in front of him would have so many tricks up his sleeve. He pointed at the couch in front of him and said, Ding Dali, get over there and sit down. This Sanjuan's medical skills are superb. I don't know how much virtue you've accumulated for you to be so lucky to be able to treat your injuries. At that moment, a tall man standing next to Ding Dali kicked him and said snappily, Yes. Squad leader, I'll go sit down now. Ding Dali hurriedly crawled to the couch and sat down. Then, he said to Li Zixuan, Thank you for joining the army. This subordinate's leg is injured. Then, Ding Dali pulled up his pants and saw that his right knee was wrapped in a few rounds of white cloth. The white cloth was very new, so it was obvious that it was freshly bandaged. Li Zixuan also sat down. He took a look and asked, Where exactly is the injury? Point it out to me. Since Ding Dali's injury was already treated, there was no need for him to take apart the bandaged wound again. Here. Ding Dali pointed at his calf 2 inches below his right knee and told Li Zishuan. Li Zishuan gently placed his hand where Ding Dali pointed at. The latter was initially worried that Li Zishuan would poke at his wound, but to his surprise, when Li Zishuan's palm landed on the wound on his leg, he did not feel the weight of Li Zishuan's palm at all. The expected situation did not become a reality. Luckily, you didn't hit your knee, or else you'd have to lie in bed for half a month. Your bruises and wounds should be healed in 2 days. Li Zishuan glanced indifferently at Ding Dali before he spoke. Through his inner strength, he could penetrate the gauze and see the injury on Ding Dali's knee. It was just as Sun Dali had said. It was just a small injury. There were some bruises around the wound. Although there was a cut, it was not deep. It was just a scratch. Thank you, Kenjun. Ding Dali breathed a sigh of relief and cupped his fists at Li Zishuan. He didn't expect that Li Zishuan would actually come to treat his injuries. This made him feel somewhat conflicted. Kenjun, your medical skills are really good. You didn't even remove the white cloth, and you already know that there's a bruise on Dali's leg. Sanjuan's medical skills are still as brilliant as before. The tall man, who was the squad leader of the 10 men, cupped his fists at Li Zishuan. Li Zishuan was puzzled. Why? Did you know me before? The squad leader immediately cupped his hands and answered, Commander, I was previously on duty in the Right Sentinel, and I accompanied General Ching to the north to rescue you a while ago. On the night of the battle with the Turks, I saw you treating the soldiers' injuries like you did today. When the academy was attacked and its confidential information was stolen, Li Zishuan mobilized his troops in the north to stop Wu Jie, but he did not expect the Turks to set up an ambush and enter Longmen Pass. Fortunately, Qing Yaojin, Qin Xiong, Wang Renbiao, and the rest led the army to help in time, so Longmen Pass was saved and Li Zishuan was saved. However, that night, the imperial court's main army and the Turks' 50,000 wolf cavalrymen fought a life-and-death battle at Yonghe Pass, which resulted in heavy casualties. After the battle, Li Zishuan shuttled through the soldiers' tents to treat the injured soldiers. He was busy for the entire night and left a deep impression on many soldiers. Li Zishuan did not expect to meet his comrade from Longmen Pass here. He patted the squad leader's shoulder and asked excitedly, What's your name? You were in the Right Sentinel before, what a coincidence. Hey, I'm a soldier under my father, but why are you in the Black Armored Army? Ching Chumo's interest was piqued, and he leaned forward to look at the squad leader seriously before he asked, You're right. The squad leader cupped his hands at Li Zishuan and Ching Chumo. Colonel, my name is Wang Rong, and I'm from Jiangzhou. During the locust plague in Jiangzhou this year, I'd like to thank the Sky Rooster Brigade for providing timely relief. You don't have to thank me. The Sky Rooster Brigade went north to provide relief, because I was following His Majesty's order. Li Zishuan waved his hand. Afterward, seeing as they had stayed in the tent for quite some time, he stood up and said, All right. You should all rest early. I know that your daily training is tougher than before, but if you want to become stronger, if you want to become the invincible black armored troops that will strike fear into the hearts of your enemies, you have to put in more sweat on the training ground. 10 days later, the 5th camp will compete with the 2nd camp. Let's see if you'd like to be stepped on by the 2nd camp and never be able to raise your heads or be stepped on by them. Then, he turned around and walked out of the tent, ignoring the stunned faces of the soldiers in the tent. Jiping, go to the next injured soldiers' camp. Chapter 1767. Join the army. It's late. Why don't we stop looking at the rest of the tents? Everyone suffered minor injuries anyway. It's not a big deal. The night was getting darker. A crescent moon hung in the sky. Li Zishuan and his men had already visited over 30 tents. Sun Jiping said to Li Zishuan at this time. Ching Chumo thought that there would be something fun when he came out. However, after following a few tents, he realized that there wasn't anything fun. He told Li Zixuan and went back to sleep. Speaking of which, this guy was Li Zixuan's personal guard. This kind of personal guard was really incompetent. However, Yuqi Baolin didn't leave. He quietly followed behind Li Zixuan. You said it yourself. There are a few above. There's no reason to leave them behind. Let's go. Let's hurry up and finish inspecting the rest of the soldiers. Try not to disturb the rest. Li Zixuan shook his head and said, Jiping, you lead the way. Let's go to the next tent. Yes. Join the army. Sun Jiping saw that Li Zixuan had made up his mind. He didn't try to persuade him anymore. He cupped his fist and replied. Then, he turned around and walked towards a tent in the northwest corner. Actually, he more or less understood Li Zixuan's way of doing things. The harsh training in the E Battalion this afternoon made the soldiers have some complaints about Li Zixuan. Especially the soldiers who were injured because of the training. They more or less complained about Li Zixuan in their hearts. Regarding this, he had heard the report from his men in the evening. Therefore, at this time, it was necessary to stabilize the morale of the soldiers. Li Zixuan visited the tents of the injured soldiers tonight and checked their injuries. This was an action to stabilize the morale of the soldiers. 42 injured soldiers have been visited. It's late now. Join the army, go and rest. Half an hour later, Li Zixuan and his men finally finished visiting the remaining injured soldiers. After walking out of the tent, Sun Jiping cupped his fist and said to Li Zixuan, Join the army. It's late. Why don't we not watch the rest of them? Anyway, they're all just lightly injured. It's not a big deal. As the night deepened, a crescent moon hung in the sky. Li Zixuan and his group had already visited more than 30 tents. Sun Jiping said to Li Zixuan. Qing Chumo originally thought that there would be something fun to do, but after following a few tents, he realized that there wasn't anything fun to do, so he informed Li Zixuan and went back to sleep. Speaking of which, this guy was Li Zixuan's personal guard on the surface, and this kind of personal guard was really incompetent. Yuqi Baolin, on the other hand, didn't leave. He quietly followed behind Li Zixuan. You've said it yourself. There's no reason to leave them behind. Let's go. Let's hurry up and finish inspecting the remaining soldiers. We should try our best not to disturb the rest of the soldiers. Li Zixuan shook his head and said, Jiping, you lead the way. Let's go to the next tent. Yes. Join the army. Sun Jiping saw that Li Zixuan had made up his mind, so he didn't try to persuade him anymore. He cupped his fist and replied, then turned around and walked towards a tent in the northwest corner. Actually, he more or less understood Li Zixuan's way of doing things. After today's harsh training in the E Battalion, the soldiers were quite dissatisfied with Li Zixuan. Especially the soldiers who were injured because of the training, they more or less complained about Li Zixuan in their hearts. Regarding this, he had heard a report from his subordinates in the evening. Therefore, at this time, it was time to stabilize the morale of the soldiers. Li Zixuan visiting the tents of the injured soldiers and checking on their injuries was an action to stabilize the morale of the soldiers. 42 injured soldiers have been visited. It's not early anymore. Join the army, quickly go and rest. Half an hour later, Li Zixuan and his group finally finished inspecting the remaining injured soldiers. After walking out of the tent, Sun Jiping cupped his fist and said to Li Zixuan. Chapter 1768. General, I heard that the Wu Battalion lost more than a dozen war horses yesterday, and more than 40 soldiers were slightly injured. The war between the Tang Empire and the Turks hasn't even started yet, but our men and horses have already been lost on the drill ground. Don't you think that this is a little inappropriate? The next morning, before the soldiers started their training, the high-ranking officers of the Black Armored Army had already gathered in the commander's tent. At this moment, almost everyone was present except for Li Zixuan. After waiting for a while, Qiu Xingong walked up to Duan Zixuan and clasped his fist. Everyone in the tent was stunned. They knew that Qiu Xingong was going to use this opportunity to make things difficult for Li Zixuan. Although everyone knew what was going on, no one jumped out because they wanted to see Duan Zixuan's attitude first. How could Duan Zixuan not see through something that others could see clearly? His eyebrows moved slightly, but his expression was calm as he said, "I know a little about this matter. Yesterday, Adjunct Li was testing whether the soldiers of the Wu Battalion would obey orders unconditionally, so he didn't give the order to stop the charge in time. As a result, the war horses collided with the wooden stakes, which led to the casualties. However, the soldiers and war horses were all wearing armor, so most of them were only slightly injured. It shouldn't be a big problem, right?" Duan Zixuan was also present when the Wu Battalion was training yesterday. He approved of Li Zixuan's method of training. What was the most important thing in the army? It was to obey orders. If the soldiers couldn't even obey orders, how could they be called soldiers? They might as well be called bandits. On this point, Duan Zixuan felt that Li Zixuan's philosophy was the same as his. "General, you can't say that. This is not the way to drill soldiers to obey military orders. Since ancient times, this Qiu has never heard of a general who would order his soldiers to ram their horses into wooden stakes." Seeing Duan Zixuan being so biased, Qiu Xingong couldn't sit still anymore and quickly refuted. "Great General, I heard that yesterday, the V Battalion lost more than a dozen war horses and more than 40 soldiers were slightly injured. The war between the Tang and the Turks hasn't even started yet, but our men and horses have already been lost on the drill ground. Don't you think this is a little inappropriate?" The next morning, before the soldiers had even started their training, the higher-ups of the black armored troops had already gathered in the commander's tent. At this moment, almost everyone was present except for Li Zixuan. After waiting for a while, Qiu Xingong stepped forward and cupped his fists towards Duan Zixuan. The faces of the generals in the tent turned cold. They knew that Qiu Xingong was going to use this opportunity to make things difficult for Li Zixuan. Although everyone was well aware of this, no one jumped out because they wanted to see Duan Zixuan's attitude first. How could Duan Zixuan not see things that others could see clearly? His eyebrows twitched slightly, but his expression remained the same. This general has some understanding of this matter. Yesterday, Adjunct Li was testing whether the soldiers of the V Battalion would obey the military order unconditionally, so he didn't give the order to stop the charge in time. As a result, the war horses crashed into the wooden stakes, resulting in the casualties. However, the soldiers and war horses were all wearing armor, so most of them were only slightly injured. It shouldn't be a big problem, right? Yesterday, when the V Battalion was undergoing the charging training, Duan Zixuan was also present. He was very supportive of Li Zixuan's method of training. What was the most important thing in the army? It was to obey the military order. If the soldiers couldn't even obey the military order, how could they still be called soldiers? They might as well be called bandits. On this point, Duan Zixuan felt that Li Zixuan's philosophy was the same as his. "Great General, you can't say this. This is not the way to drill soldiers to obey military orders. Since ancient times, this Qiu has never heard of a general who would order his soldiers to ram their horses into wooden stakes." Seeing Duan Zixuan being so biased, Qiu Xingong couldn't sit still anymore and quickly refuted. Chapter 1769. General, what do you think of this competition? Li Zixuan asked Duan Zixuan in the commander's tent of the black armored army. Duan Zixuan put down the booklet in his hand and raised his head. There was a trace of admiration in his eyes as he laughed. "Ha ha! Li Zixuan's competition method is indeed novel. I have never heard of an army going into battle without rations. This method can train the soldiers' ability to survive in the wilderness and also allow the generals and soldiers of both sides to display their strengths in the competition. I think this method is very feasible. I will get someone to make a few copies of this booklet and distribute them to the generals of each battalion. Just now, Lieutenant Lee only gave you a general introduction. This booklet specifies what you can do, what you can't do, what counts as a violation, and what counts as a victory during the competition. The commanding generals of each battalion, especially the commanding generals of the 2nd Battalion and the 5th Battalion, should study it carefully. Don't violate the rules during the competition. Otherwise, you will be punished according to military law. The rules that Li Zixuan proposed not only included military formations, wilderness survival, but also military strategy. Duan Zixuan's eyes lit up. Compared to this, the previous military exercises were too one-sided and superficial. He wanted to use this opportunity to see the results of this method. If it was good, Duan Zixuan planned to implement it in the Black Armored Army in the future. Yes, sir. Zhang Shigui, Sun Tao, Zhang Kangyan, Lu De, and Sun Jiping. The 5 captains cupped their fists and accepted Duan Zixuan's order. However, the competition between the 2nd Battalion and the 5th Battalion requires them to leave the city. It's no small matter for an army to leave the city. I need to report this to the Emperor first. After the Emperor approves, the competition between the 5th Battalion and the 2nd Battalion is set. Before this, the 2 battalions will need to be well trained and prepared. General, what do you think of this competition method? In the commander's tent of the Black Armored Army, Li Zixuan looked at Duan Zixuan and cupped his fist. Duan Zixuan put down the booklet in his hand and raised his head. There was a trace of admiration in his eyes. He laughed. Ha ha! Li Zixuan's competition method is really novel. I have never heard of an army going into battle without rations. This method can not only train the officers' and soldiers' ability to survive in the wilderness, but it can also reproduce actual combat to the greatest extent, allowing the main generals and officers of both sides to display their strengths in the competition. This general believes that this method is very feasible. I will get someone to make a few copies of this booklet and distribute them to the generals of each battalion. Just now, Lieutenant Lee only gave you a general introduction. This booklet specifies what you can do, what you can't do, what counts as a violation, and what counts as a victory during the competition. The commanding generals of each battalion, especially the commanding generals of the 2nd Battalion and the 5th Battalion, should study it carefully. Don't violate the rules during the competition. Otherwise, you will be punished according to military law. The rules of the Black Armored Army's rules. The previous military exercises in the armies were of armies. Militaries, armies. He wanted to use this opportunity to see the effects of this method. If the results were good, Duan Zixuan planned to implement it in the Black Armored Army. Yes, sir. Zhang Shigui, Sun Tao, Zhang Kangyan, Lu De, and Sun Jiping. The 5 captains cupped their fists and accepted Duan Zixuan's order. However, the 2nd Battalion and the 5th Battalion have to leave the city for the competition. It's no small matter for the army to leave the city. I need to report to the Emperor first. After the Emperor approves, the competition between the 5th Battalion and the 2nd Battalion will be set. Chapter 1770. Lantian County. Although this was just a small county next to Chang'an, the scale of the city was far from the capital, Chang'an City, but the scale of business here was slowly catching up with Chang'an City. The center of Tang Dynasty's business was quietly shifting towards Lantian County. Behind all this, it was all because Li Zixuan was the lord of Lantian County. Under his guidance, Lantian County established a Department of Commerce to take over the cases of merchants and maintain the business environment in the city. The merchants, who were originally at the bottom of society, received equal political treatment with ordinary citizens in Lantian County. This political treatment not only referred to their social status, but also their children could attend Lantian County's official school. To the merchants of the world, this was an opportunity that they could only dream of. Therefore, in the course of time, there were more and more shops, inns, and restaurants in Lantian County. Therefore, today's announcement in Tang Daily, Yanhuang Chamber of Commerce is organizing a donation drive, caused a stir in Lantian County that was not smaller than Chang'an City. Boss Zhang, what do you think of the news today? In a silk shop, two middle-aged men were chatting. What do I think? What can I think? This matter was initiated by the Yanhuang Chamber of Commerce, which means that it was instructed by Marquis. We can do business in Lantian County, and our business is getting more and more prosperous. Isn't it all because of Marquis's grace? Just based on this old man will donate a few hundred strings of cash to this donation drive. Boss Zhang is so righteous. That's exactly what I was thinking. Marquis's treatment of us merchants is indescribable. If not for Marquis, would my little brat be able to attend an official school? I only hope that the little brat can work hard and get into Yanhuang College in a few years. Then, I will have nothing else to ask for in this life. For this donation drive, if not for anything else, for Marquis, I will donate 500 strings of cash. Lantian County. Although this was just a small county adjacent to Chang'an, and the scale of the city was far inferior to the imperial capital, Chang'an, the scale of the business activities here was slowly catching up with Chang'an. The business center of the Tang Empire was quietly shifting towards Lantian County. Behind all of this, it was all because Li Zishuan was the lord of Lantian County. Under his guidance, Lantian County established the Department of Commerce, which specialized in taking over the cases of merchants and maintaining the business environment in the city. The merchants, who were originally at the bottom of the social ladder, received equal political treatment with the common people in Lantian County. This political treatment not only referred to their social status, but also their children could also attend Lantian County's official school. To the world's merchants, this was an opportunity that they could only dream of. As a result, the number of shops, inns, and restaurants in Lantian County increased. Therefore, today's announcement on Tang Daily, the Yanhuang Chamber of Commerce intends to hold a fundraising event, had caused a stir in Lantian County that was not any smaller than Chang'an City. Mr. Zhang, what do you think about the news in today's newspaper? In a silk shop, two middle-aged men were chatting. What do you think? What can I think? This matter was initiated by the Yanhuang Chamber of Commerce, which means that it was incited by Marquis. For us to be able to do business in Lantian County, and our business is getting more and more prosperous, isn't it all because of Marquis's grace? Just based on this old man will donate a few hundred strings of cash to this fundraising event. Mr. Zhang is so righteous. That's what I think as well. Marquis's treatment of us merchants is indescribable. If not for Marquis, would my little brat be able to attend an official school? I only hope that the little brat can work hard and be admitted to Yanhuang College in a few years. Then, I will have no other wishes in this life. For this fundraising event, if not for anything else, for Marquis, I will donate 500 strings of cash. Chapter 1771. Your Majesty. General Duan requests an audience. After the morning court session, Li Er had just arrived at Ganlu Hall when a chamberlain quickly walked in and cupped his fists. In recent days, most of the officials had been busy preparing for the war with the Turks. This involved the cooperation between the various yamens, and most of this was done in private. There were very few matters that needed to be discussed in the imperial court, so the morning court sessions had been dismissed early in the past few days. Hm? Duan Zishuan? Summon him in. Li Er's heart skipped a beat and he hurriedly ordered the chamberlain. Yes, Your Majesty. The chamberlain cupped his fists and left. After a while, Duan Zishuan quickly walked in and bowed to Li Er. This old official greets Your Majesty. Ha! You may rise, Minister Duan. Li Er smiled and raised his hand to Duan Jishuan. Duan Jishuan straightened up and Li Er went straight to the point. Minister Duan, do you have any business in the palace today? Currently, the various barracks in Chang were undergoing closed training, and the generals of the various armies were stationed in the barracks. If there was no urgent matter, they could not leave the barracks. Now that Duan Jishuan had come to the palace, it meant that he had something to report. Your Majesty, this old official does indeed have something to report. Duan Jishuan cupped his fists and said, ever since Li Kanjun joined the Black Armored Army, a new set of training exercises has been introduced. However, some of the generals in the barracks have doubts about this new set of exercises, so only 3 of the 5 barracks are using the new set of exercises for their daily training. In order to prove which is better, General Chiu and Li Kanjun plan to have a competition between the 2 barracks using the new set of exercises and the old set of exercises. These are the specific rules of this competition. Your Majesty, please take a look. Duan Jishuan then took out a small booklet. It was the detailed explanation of the competition that Li Zishuan had given him in the morning. Your Majesty, General Duan requests an audience. After the morning court session, Li Er had just arrived at Ganlu Hall when a chamberlain quickly walked in and cupped his fists. In recent days, most of the officials had been busy preparing for the war with the Turks. This involved the cooperation between the various yamans, and most of this was done in private. There were very few matters that needed to be discussed in the imperial court, so the morning court sessions had been dismissed early in the past few days. Duan Jishuan? Summon him in. Li Er's heart skipped a beat when he heard this, and he hurriedly said to the inner attendant, Here. The attendant cupped his hands in acknowledgement and turned to leave. Not long after, Duan Jishuan walked in quickly. He bowed to Li Er and said, This old subject greets your Majesty. Ha ha. Minister Duan, you may rise. Li Er had a slight smile on his face and raised his hand towards Duan Jishuan. Duan Jishuan complied and straightened his body. Li Er went straight to the point and asked, Dear official Duan, what business do you have in the palace today? Now, all the barracks guards in Chang were undergoing closed training, and the chief generals of each army were also stationed in the barracks. They were not allowed to leave the barracks unless there was something important. Now that Duan Jishuan had come to the palace, it meant that he had something to report. Your Majesty, I do have something to report. Duan Jishuan cupped his hands and said, Ever since Li Kanjun joined the Black Armored Army, a new set of training exercises has been introduced. However, some of the generals in the barracks have doubts about this new set of exercises, so currently, only 3 of the 5 barracks are using the new set of exercises for their daily training. In order to prove which one is better, General Chiu and Li Kanjun intend to have a competition between the 2 barracks using the new set of exercises and the old set of exercises. These are the specific rules of this competition. Your Majesty, please take a look. After that, Duan Jishuan took out a small booklet from his bosom. It was the detailed explanation of the competition that Li Zishuan had given him in the morning. Chapter 1772. Hurry, hurry, hurry. Hang up all these red lanterns in the residence. You guys, go and see if there's anything left to clean. If the guests come tomorrow and find the house dusty, you won't have a good time. Why is there an old chair here? Hurry up and leave. Change everything to a new mahogany chair. You. I'm talking about you. Go to the kitchen and see if all the ingredients have been bought. Lan Province, Yong County, Provincial Governor's Residence. At this moment, the entire provincial governor's residence was bustling with activity. Red satin, lanterns, and ribbons decorated the entire residence, and it was brimming with joy. Tomorrow was the day of Provincial Governor Wang Renbiao's wedding, and the bride was the woman of his dreams, Li Jingqiu. Speaking of which, it was truly not easy for this pair of ill-fated lovebirds to end up together. A few days ago, Princess Tang had tried to break them up because of Li Jingchu's lowly status, and the two of them had almost gone to the Yellow Springs. Fortunately, Li Zixuan had sent an urgent letter to Lan Province, allowing him to reverse Princess Tang and Wang Yu's attitudes. Otherwise, Princess Tang and the elders of the Wang clan of Taiyuan would never have agreed to this marriage. Master, Princess Royal, the residence has been cleaned up. We're just waiting for the bride to enter the house tomorrow. The two of you can rest assured. In the backyard, Wang Yu was chatting with Princess Tang in a pavilion. At this moment, a maidservant came over and bowed to Wang Yu and Princess Tang and go and keep a close eye on it. Although this is Lan Province, as the eldest son of the Wang clan of Taiyuan, nothing can go wrong with his wedding. Otherwise, we will lose face for the entire Wang clan. Princess Tang glanced at the maidservant and sternly said, "Hurry, hurry, hurry! Hang up all these red lanterns in the residence. You guys, go and see if there's anything left to clean. If the guests come tomorrow and find the house dusty, you won't have a good time. Why is there an old chair here? Hurry up and leave. Change everything to a new mahogany chair. You. I'm talking about you. Go to the kitchen and see if all the ingredients have been bought." Lan Province, Yong County, Provincial Governor's Office. At this moment, the entire provincial governor's manor was bustling with activity. Red silk, colorful satin, lanterns, and streamers decorated the entire manor. It was brimming with a joyous atmosphere because tomorrow was the wedding of their provincial governor Wang Renbiao, and the bride was Li Jingchu, whom Wang Renbiao yearned for even in his dreams. Speaking of which, it was not easy for this pair of ill-fated lovebirds to end up together. A few days ago, Princess Tang tried to break them up because of Li Zixuan's lowly status, and the two of them almost died together. Fortunately, Li Zixuan wrote a letter and rushed to Lan Province in a timely manner, thus reversing Princess Tang and Wang Yu's attitudes. Otherwise, Princess Tang and some of the elders of the Wang family of Taiyuan would never have agreed to this marriage. Master, eldest princess, everything in the manor has been cleaned up. We're just waiting for the bride to enter the manor tomorrow. Don't worry. In the backyard, Wang Yu was chatting with Princess Tang in the pavilion when a woman who looked like a servant girl came over and bowed to Wang Yu and Princess Tang and keep a close watch. Although this is Lan Province, my cousin is the eldest son of the Wang family of Taiyuan. Nothing can go wrong with his wedding, or else he will lose face for the entire Wang family. Princess Tang glanced at the servant girl and sternly said. Chapter 1773. Your son will remember father's teachings today, and will never forget them. In the sweet nectar hall, after hearing Li Er's heartfelt advice, Li Chengqian cupped his hands and said solemnly, Li Er nodded his head approvingly. Li Chengqian's heart skipped a beat and he cupped his hands towards Li Er again. Father, your son has previously subscribed to a portion of the Yan Huang Chamber of Commerce's shares and Strange Culture's shares. Now, I can be considered a member of the Yan Huang Chamber of Commerce. Although the Eastern Palace has not been involved in the Yan Huang Chamber of Commerce's business for the past year, Little Xian still had people send over the Eastern Palace's dividends every month. Now, your son can take out about 30,000 strings of cash. For this donation drive, your son would like the shopkeeper of the Royal Shop, Craftsman Pavilion, to donate 30,000 strings of cash. Firstly, although your son is not in the business world, I still hold shares in the Yan Huang Chamber of Commerce and can be considered a part of the Yan Huang Chamber of Commerce. Now that Little Xian is using the name of the Yan Huang Chamber of Commerce to call for the great Tang's merchants to raise funds for the country, your son should respond. Secondly, these days, father has been working hard on the northern expedition and has not been able to sleep at night. Your son and mother are both worried about your health. This 30,000 strings of cash can be considered your son's contribution to the army. I hope it can share your worries. The Craftsman Pavilion in the west of Chang'an City was a shop run by the royal family. In fact, in the past dynasties, the main members of the royal family, such as the emperor, empress, crown prince, and so on, although they would not openly engage in business, they would secretly send people to run some shops to make up for their expenses. However, this money was a hidden income after all. No one would speak of it openly, especially as the crown prince. That was even more so. Think about it, why would you, a country's crown prince, earn so much money in private for? Could it be that you want to secretly cultivate power and usurp the throne and rebel? But today, in front of Li Er, Li Chengqian had openly revealed his little treasury. This kind of father-son relationship could not be said to be fake. Your son will remember father's teachings today, and will never forget them. In the sweet nectar hall, after listening to Li Er's heartfelt advice, Li Chengqian solemnly cupped his hands and said, Li Er nodded approvingly. At this moment Li Chengqian's heart stirred. He cupped his hands towards Li Er and said, Father, I have previously purchased a portion of the Yan Huang Chamber of Commerce's shares, as well as the shares of Strange Culture. Now I can be considered a member of the Yan Huang Chamber of Commerce. Although the Eastern Palace has not been involved in the business of the Yan Huang Chamber of Commerce for the past year, Little Xian still sends over the dividends that belong to the Eastern Palace every month. Right now, I can take out about 30,000 strings of cash. For this donation drive, I would like to ask the shopkeeper of the royal shop, the House of Craftsmen, to donate the 30,000 strings of coins. Firstly, although I am not in the business world, I still hold shares in the Yan Huang Chamber of Commerce and can be considered a part of the Yan Huang Chamber of Commerce. Now that Little Xian has used the name of the Yan Huang Chamber of Commerce to call on the great Tang's merchants to raise military funds for the country, I should respond. Secondly, these days, Father has been working hard on the northern expedition and has not been able to sleep at night. Mother and I are both worried about Father's health. This 30,000 strings of cash can be considered as my contribution to the army. I hope that it can share Father's burdens. The House of Craftsmen in the west of Chang'an City was a shop run by the royal family. In fact, in the past dynasties, the main members of the royal family, such as the emperor, the empress, the crown prince, and so on, although they did not openly engage in business, they would secretly send people to run some shops to earn some money to make up for their expenses. However, this money was after all a hidden income. No one would speak of it openly, especially if it was the crown prince. That was even more so. Think about it, as the heir to the throne of a country, why would you secretly earn so much money for? Could it be that you wanted to secretly cultivate power and usurp the throne and rebel? But today, in front of Li Er, Li Chengqian had openly revealed his little treasury. This kind of father-son relationship could not be said to be fake. Chapter 1774. General, are you looking for us? Sun Tao and Zhang Kanyan walked in from the side tent of the black armored army and greeted Qiu Xingong. Yes. Qiu Xingong put down the document in his hand, raised his head and said to the two of them, Sit down. Thank you, General. The two of them cupped their fists and bowed. Then, they knelt down on the cushions on either side. Qiu Xingong opened his mouth and said, General, the army just came back. They said that His Majesty has agreed to the competition between the two camps in 9 days. Sun Tao, are you confident in this competition? General, in terms of strength, the soldiers of the second camp are better than the soldiers of the Wu camp. Therefore, I am confident that I can defeat the Wu camp. Sun Tao cupped his fists and said without hesitation. This guy always liked to be straightforward. He didn't like to beat around the bush, and he didn't like to be humble. He felt that if he could defeat the Wu camp, he would definitely win. Good. I didn't misjudge you. Qiu Xingong was overjoyed. He laughed out loud and said, Sun Tao, as long as you can defeat the Wu camp, I will reward you generously. Thank you, General. Sun Tao bowed and said. Seeing the two of them so optimistic, Zhang Kongyan couldn't help but interrupt. General, I think that this competition is not as simple as it seems. Li Zishuan has always been cunning. Before he made the rules of the competition, it is impossible for him not to know the difference in strength between the two battalions. The reason why he dared to propose this competition in front of so many generals means that he must have made thorough preparations. We have to be on guard against him. Also, I have been worried about one thing. Will Li Zishuan participate in this competition personally? According to rumors, he is a master of martial arts. If he participates in the competition, there will be many uncertainties. Hearing this, Qiu Xingong's face instantly turned serious. After a moment of silence, he opened his mouth and said, Kong Nian, your worries are not unfounded. In the morning, this old man thought that I had guessed the little tricks that kid was playing behind the scenes. I didn't expect that I had overlooked such an important point. In a while, this general will go and tell the general that he must not let this kid participate in the battle personally. He is an adjutant of the army, not the general of the Wu battalion. General is wise. Zhang Kongyan smiled and bowed to flatter Qiu Xingong. The only person he could rely on in the black armored army was Qiu Xingong. His future also depended on Qiu Xingong. That was why he was so hard-working when he came up with a plan. There is one more thing. Qiu Xingong focused his attention and looked at Sun Tao, continuing, Sun Tao, in the next few days, there will be an additional combat training for the B battalion. As for the specifics of the training, you can secretly go to the A battalion in the afternoon to take a look. Just as they train, the B battalion will also train accordingly. Do you hear me? Hearing this, Sun Tao was shocked. He widened his eyes and said, Ah? General, didn't we agree to follow the original training method? If we suddenly, wouldn't we will for the ridicule? Besides, if I sneak peeked, if I get caught. Qiu Xingong glared at him and said in annoyance, What are you laughing at? Li Zishuan wasn't the one who created this combat training. The military had it for a long time. Letting the 2nd Battalion train in close combat techniques is to ensure that you won't panic when you encounter wild beasts in the competition 9 days later. Otherwise, not only will you not be able to hunt your prey, you might even be chased by the wild beasts in the forest. If that happens, you don't need to compete anymore. Just admit defeat and don't embarrass me. Seeing that Qiu Xingong was angry, Sun Tao shrunk his neck and admitted defeat. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, sir. Adjutant, you are very observant. To be able to see through Li Zishuan's rules so quickly, I am really impressed. At this moment, Zhang Kongyan finally understood what Qiu Xingong meant when he said that he had guessed the little trick the kid was trying to pull behind his back. He was referring to the combat training recently promoted by the Wu battalion. Thus, with a smile on his face, he gave Qiu Xingong another compliment. And this might just be one of the ways Li Zishuan tampered with the rules of the competition. The two of you need to think about it carefully for the next 2 days. If you discover that the rules of the competition are disadvantageous to us, report to this old man immediately. Qiu Xingong nodded his head and ordered. Yes, General. Sun Tao cupped his fist and replied in a muffled voice. Zhang Kongyan rolled his eyes and said, General, I feel that instead of looking for problems with the rules passively, why don't we take the initiative to attack and let Li Zishuan be busy with his own matters? When the competition starts, we can win without a fight. Oh? Tell me, how should we take the initiative to attack? Qiu Xingong was shocked and asked quickly. I have a plan that can make the hearts of the Wu battalion fall into chaos before the start of the competition. Zhang Kongyan smiled evilly. This guy was also very alert. He knew that the tents in the camp weren't soundproof. In order to prevent what he was going to say from being heard by others, He stood up and walked to Qiu Xingong and whispered, "Tell me quickly." Qiu Xingong's eyes flashed and he couldn't wait to ask. At this moment, Sun Tao also couldn't help but stand up and move closer to the two of them. Zhang Kongyan smiled and whispered, "General, the training in the Wu camp is very strict, and there are so many soldiers who were injured yesterday. There must be a lot of people who have complaints about Li Zixuan. We can send people to the Wu camp to sow discord between them and Li Zixuan. This will affect the rest of the soldiers in the Wu camp. When there are too many of them, Li Zixuan will lose his prestige in the Wu camp and even in the Black Armored Army. Once the morale of the soldiers is disrupted, even if Li Zixuan is still alive, he will still lose this competition. If this can cause a mutiny in the Wu camp, then Li Zixuan's days in the Black Armored Army will come to an end. At that time, it will be easy for us to win the competition." It had to be said that this guy was too cunning. He didn't have the confidence to fight force with force, so he wanted to use tricks. Good plan. Good plan. After listening, Qiu Xingong pondered for a moment and suddenly laughed. Sun Tao couldn't help but say, "General, I think that it is impossible for the second camp to lose this competition. Zhang Kongyan's plan is completely despicable and not what a real man would do. I don't think it is necessary. If we want to win, we should win fair and square." This fellow had a straightforward temperament and would say whatever came to his mind. As soon as he finished speaking, Zhang Kongyan's face instantly darkened and he almost vomited blood. "Sun Tao, you bastard! I am obviously helping you. Don't be so ungrateful. How can you be so sure that the second camp will win this competition? If we lose, can you bear the consequences?" Zhang Kongyan pointed at Sun Tao and said in exasperation, "Humph! Why can't I bear the consequences? If we lose this competition, I, Sun Tao, am willing to bear the consequences. If we win with this scheme, then I would rather lose to the Wu camp." Sun Tao snorted and turned his head away and said angrily, "Shut up." Qiu Xingong's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. At this moment, he couldn't hold it in any longer and interrupted Sun Tao, "We must win this competition. If we lose, Li Zixuan will be able to control the Black Armored Army from now on. By then, both of you can forget about having a good life. Sun Tao, you don't have to get involved in the matter of sowing discord in the Wu camp. Just focus on training the second camp soldiers. Leave this matter to Kong Yen." "Yes, General." Although Sun Tao was extremely unwilling in his heart, in the face of the powerful Qiu Xingong, he could only swallow this reluctance into his stomach. Qiu Xingong looked at Zhang Kongyan and ordered, "Kongyan, go back to the camp and pick a few smart men. It would be best if they know the people from the Wu camp. Let them sneak into the Wu camp during lunchtime and secretly instigate the soldiers who were injured yesterday. Let them be dissatisfied with Li Zixuan." Zhang Kongyan clasped his fist and said, "Yes, sir." "Good. All right, all of you are dismissed." Qiu Xingong nodded and waved his hand. "Zhiping, how was the training in the morning?" Noon, outside the cafeteria of the Wu camp, a group of burly men squatted on the empty ground and wolfed down the unappetizing big pot of rice. Li Zixuan, Sun Zhiping, Ching Chumo and the others squatted together again. Li Zixuan took the opportunity to ask Sun Zhiping during the meal break. In the morning, he was called over by Zhang Shigui and Lu De. According to Zhang Shigui, he was the Black Armored Army's adjutant and not just the Wu camp's adjutant. Since the A camp and D camp had also chosen to use the new training method, then as the adjutant, he couldn't just be biased towards the Wu camp. Therefore, he mainly guided the A camp and D camp's training in the morning. Oh, the morale of the soldiers is better than yesterday. They are also more serious in their training. It must be the effect of last night's patrol. Sun Zhiping swallowed the food in his mouth and replied, "That's good." Li Zixuan couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. There were two sides to everything. If there was a good side, then there would naturally be a bad side. Although high-intensity military training could increase the strength of the soldiers in a short period of time, it could also cause the soldiers to be conflicted. Once there were more and more people who were conflicted, then the morale of the army would be messed up. Once the morale of the army was messed up, then even the best training method would be useless. Li Zixuan's new training method was actually a risky move. If it wasn't done well, then it would be inviting trouble to himself. But looking at the current situation of the Black Armored Army, if they wanted to form a fighting force in a short period of time, then they had to take the risk. But the current result was still good. It seemed like it was still necessary to give the soldiers some thought. Li Zixuan thought to himself, this guy wanted to do a job again. Does the army have a map of the Nyosho mountain area? After coming back from his thoughts, Li Zixuan asked again. Sun Jiping thought for a while and nodded. I do have this, but I don't have it here. You can go ask the general will definitely have it. Good. Then I'll go find General Duan later. Li Zixuan nodded and said, in these 2 days, I'll make a sand table based on the map of the Nyosho mountain area. As for the training of the Wu battalion, you have to worry more about it. If I have time, I'll come over to take a look. After the sand table is done, if you have nothing to do at night, you can come to my tent to deduce the art of war. The Nyosho mountain he was talking about was not the famous scenic spot around Nanjing in the future. The Nyosho mountain he was talking about was located in the southwest of Chang'an. It was a branch of the Zhongnan Mountains and also belonged to the Qinling Mountains. It was under the jurisdiction of Chang'an County and was about 30 li away from Chang'an City. Chang'an County belonged to the hinterland of the Wei River Plain. It was located at the south of the 800 li Qinchuan. To the south was the Qinling Mountains and to the north was the Wei River. In the Tang Dynasty, soil erosion was not so serious. There were towering trees everywhere. At the foot of the Zhongnan Mountains was a primeval forest. The reason why Li Zixuan chose the Nyosho Mountain as the location for the Wu Battalion and Yi Battalion was also very thoughtful. First of all, although there were many mountains near Chang'an, there were more hills. There were not many mountains that were of a large scale. If you counted carefully, there were only Mount Li and Nyosho Mountain. But in the area of Mount Li, there was the Emperor's Palace. Normally, when the Emperor organized a hunting trip, he would come here. In this era, instead of saying that Mount Li was a primeval forest, it was better to say that it was a large tourist attraction. It was not suitable to have a military exercise here. But the Nyosho Mountain was different. There was no Emperor's Palace here. Usually there were no traces of people. There were many kinds of wild animals in the forest, such as jackals, wolves, tigers, and leopards. It was a good place to train the army. When marching to war, it was important to pay attention to the right time, the right place, and the right people. Before this, Li Zixuan had only heard that there was such a mountain in the southwest of Chang'an City. However, he had never been there personally. Naturally, he did not know the specific terrain. Therefore, he needed to understand the terrain of the Nyosho Mountain before the competition. Only then could he formulate targeted tactics. Sand table? Join the army. What is this sand table? Sun Jiping was confused. Back then, Li Zixuan had made a sand table for the academy. It could be said that Li Er was completely stunned. Later, Li Jing wanted to promote the sand table in the army. However, in the past year, there was no war in the Tang Empire. The sand table had no place to be used. It only existed in the study rooms of Li Er and Li Jing. Naturally, Sun Jiping had never heard of it. Hey! I know this sand table. Using sand to build the terrain of a place, it looks like the real thing. Qing Chumo laughed and showed off. As a student of the academy and the son of Qing Yaojin, he naturally knew what a sand table was. Well, it's similar to what Chumo said. Jiping, you'll know when it's done. When the time comes, let's deduce how to march and arrange the army on the sand table. Li Zishuan nodded. Yes. Join the army. Sun Jiping quickly replied. Join the army, the general wants you to go to the commander's tent. At this moment, a soldier came over and saluted Li Zishuan respectfully. The general? Li Zishuan was puzzled, but he did not hesitate. After putting the bowl in his hand beside Qing Chumo, he stood up and said, Okay, I'll go now. Chapter 1775. General, are you looking for me? The journey from the Wu barracks kitchen to the Black Armored Army's marshal's tent was about a mile long. Li Zishuan walked quickly and arrived at the marshal's tent in no time. He saw Duan Zhishuan sitting at the head of the table and Qiu Xingong sitting at the side. He cupped his fist and bowed to Qiu Xingong. I hope I didn't disturb Marshal Li's lunch? Duan Zhishuan chuckled and said with a kind face. Qiu Xingong frowned. He felt that Duan Zhishuan's attitude towards Li Zishuan had changed greatly, but he couldn't pinpoint exactly what had changed. General, you must be joking. Military affairs are more important. What's a lunch? Li Zishuan was also curious. Qiu Xingong didn't call him over just to ask if he had eaten, right? How boring would that be? Thinking of this, he cupped his fist and asked, General, is there anything I can help you with? Take a seat first. Duan Zhishuan pointed to the cushion at the side and glanced at Qiu Xingong meaningfully. It's not me who is looking for you, it's General Qiu who is looking for you. Xingong, since you're the one who raised the question, you should talk to Marshal Li. Duan Zhishuan was old and shrewd. He wasn't willing to be used by Qiu Xingong. This was a direct conflict between Qiu Xingong and Li Zishuan. He only wanted to be the judge and didn't want to be stuck between the two. Qiu Xingong's face stiffened. The reason why he directly looked for Duan Zhishuan and not Li Zishuan was because he wanted Duan Zhishuan to help him facilitate this matter. Now that Duan Zhishuan directly pushed him out, his attitude was very obvious. Ahem. I'm here today for one thing. I hope Marshal Li can clear up my doubts. Since Duan Zhishuan had already put it this way, Qiu Xingong had no choice but to speak up as well. He looked at Li Zishuan with a slightly unnatural expression and said in a deep voice, Regarding the competition 9 days from now, Li Kanjun has already explained the specific rules of the competition to the generals in the army. However, I wonder if Li Kanjun plans to personally participate in this competition? Hearing this, Li Zishuan's eyes flashed with understanding. This old man was worried that his participation would affect the game balance, so he came to complain to Duan Zhishuan. Marshal Qiu, do you think that I should participate in this competition? Li Zishuan's eyes flashed with ridicule as he looked at Qiu Xingong and asked. Qiu Xingong's face froze. After a moment of silence, he cleared his throat and said seriously, This competition is between the 2nd Battalion and the 5th Battalion. It is also a competition between the old and new training methods of the Black Armored Army. Adjunct Li is an adjunct of the Black Armored Army, not the general or sergeant of the 5th Battalion. So for the sake of fairness, I think. Haha. Actually, Marshal Qiu doesn't have to worry. I have never thought of participating in this competition personally. Li Zishuan didn't wait for Qiu Xingong to finish speaking and interrupted him when he heard Qiu Xingong's dignified words. Qiu Xingong's expression instantly became abnormally ugly. Li Zishuan's words could be considered as directly tearing apart the disguise on his face, causing him to become a complete villain in front of Duan Zhishuan. How could he not be angry? Taking 2 deep breaths, Qiu Xingong suppressed the anger in his heart and regained his composure. He looked at Li Zishuan and said with a fake smile, Haha, Marshal Li must be joking. What is there to worry about? I'm just thinking about the fairness of the competition. I'm not biased towards any side. So General Qiu is so selfless. I'm in awe. Li Zishuan clasped his hands and said with a smile. However, there was a hint of sarcasm in his voice. It was obvious that he was mocking Qiu Xingong. Then, without waiting for Qiu Xingong to react, he continued. However, in this competition, even though I won't be personally fighting with the 2nd Battalion soldiers, I will be in the Wu Battalion's tent to help them strategize. Just like what General Qiu said, this competition is a competition between the new and old training methods of the Black Armored Army. As the Marshal Qiu, I am in charge of the training of the army. The Wu Battalion is the executor of the new training method. It shouldn't be out of line for me to help them strategize, right? Qiu Xingong, who was about to explode in anger, couldn't help but frown when he heard the second half of Li Zixuan's words. If it was in the past, he definitely wouldn't have taken Li Zixuan seriously. Not to mention letting Li Zixuan strategize for the Wu Battalion, even if Li Zixuan were to fight alongside the Wu Battalion soldiers. He wouldn't have cared, because at that time, in his eyes, Li Zixuan was just a brat who didn't know anything about military affairs. So what if he had a body full of bravery? On the battlefield, individual bravery was useless. But now, after seeing Li Zixuan's performance in the Black Armored Army, Qiu Xingong was starting to panic. New training methods, tactics, unity, etc. These were not things that a brat who had just entered the army for a few days could do. Under such circumstances, he didn't dare to let Li Zixuan participate in the competition between the 2nd Battalion and the Wu Battalion. He didn't dare to take the risk. Of course not. While Qiu Xingong was hesitating, Duan Zixuan opened his mouth and said calmly, I have said from the start that the daily training of the Black Armored Army will be arranged by Li Zixuan. This competition will be a test of the new and old training method. As the one who proposed the new training methods, Li Zixuan should participate. Grand General. Hearing this, Qiu Xingong was shocked. He wanted to stop Duan Zixuan, but Qiu Xingong waved his hand and interrupted. Xingong, Li Zixuan has already agreed that he won't participate in the battle personally. Can't he just stay in the commander's tent and strategize? This matter is settled. There is no need for further discussion. I think this is very fair. Duan Zixuan couldn't forget what Li Er said to him in the Sweet Dew Palace this morning. Although the competition between the 2nd Battalion and the 5th Battalion hadn't started yet, the competition between the new and the old drill codes had already been decided by Li Er. Since Li Er was so supportive of Li Zixuan, there was no reason for him to help Qiu Xingong suppress Li Zixuan. Yes, Grand General, then. I will take my leave. Seeing Duan Zixuan's determined face, it was obvious that there was no room for discussion. Although Qiu Xingong was frustrated, he couldn't say anything more and could only leave. After all, he still had a backup plan. Inside the commander's tent, there was only Li Zixuan and Duan Zixuan left. Thank you, Grand General. After Qiu Xingong left, Li Zixuan stood up and cupped his fist to thank Duan Zixuan. Duan Zixuan laughed and waved his hand. I am just doing my job impartially. Why does Li Zixuan need to thank me? Actually, you didn't have to give in just now. For this competition, even if you were to participate in the battle personally, it wouldn't be wrong. This is because the overall strength of the 2nd Battalion is much higher than the Wu Battalion. Li Zixuan smiled and said, the difference in strength between the two battalions does exist, but this difference is gradually decreasing. After 9 days, this difference might be negligible. Furthermore, my martial arts skills are much higher than all the soldiers in the battalion. If I were to participate in the battle personally, it would be a bit of a bully. It is enough for me to be able to command from the rear. No matter what, Li Zixuan was a grandmaster late-stage martial arts expert. There were only a few people with such strength in the entire Tang Empire. It could be said that he was now standing at the top of the pyramid in martial arts. Although a grandmaster realm expert could not fight against an army of 1,000 in a small-scale battle, a single grandmaster realm martial artist was enough to change the outcome of the battle. That was why Qiu Xingong was so concerned about whether Li Zixuan would go up or not. However, this competition was mainly to compare the new and old training method. If Li Zixuan were to participate in the battle personally, even if he won, it would be difficult to prove anything, because a grandmaster late-stage martial arts expert would affect the balance of the game too much. Since Li Zixuan is so confident, then I won't say anything more. But Li Zixuan, don't worry. Even if the Wu Battalion loses this competition, you will still be in charge of the training of the black armored troops. Duan Zixuan nodded. Then he smiled mysteriously and whispered to Li Zixuan. Hearing this, Li Zixuan was shocked. He said, "How can that be? We had an agreement that if the Wu Battalion loses this competition, the new training method will be abolished and the training of the black armored troops will be handed over to General Qiu." A man's words carried enormous weight. How could he go back on his words? "General, please don't blame me for being unjust." Duan Zixuan patted Li Zixuan's shoulder and said solemnly, "Li Zixuan, this is not my idea. It is His Majesty's idea." Li Zixuan didn't understand. He asked, "What do you mean by that?" Duan Zixuan explained, "His Majesty approves of your new training regimen. He believes that if we want the newly expanded black armored troops to become a fighting force within 2 months, the previous training regimen will definitely not work. We can only try your new training regimen. Therefore, even if the E Battalion loses this time, the black armored troops will still use the new training regimen." Hearing this, Li Zixuan suddenly understood. At this time, he couldn't help but admire Li Er's foresight and decisiveness. If it was another emperor, he might not be able to see the current situation and problems of the black armored troops at first glance. Even so, a gentleman's promise is worth 1,000 gold. Since we have agreed to the bet, we have to accept the loss. If the Wu Battalion loses the competition 9 days later, I will still abdicate my position. As for His Majesty, I will explain it to him personally. After a moment of silence, Li Zixuan still held his fists and said. But then he changed the topic and said, "But I am confident that I can beat the 2nd Battalion. The Wu Battalion will definitely not lose this competition." Hearing Li Zixuan's words, Duan Zixuan was speechless for a moment. After a while, he sighed and said, "All right. Since Adjunct Li insists and is so confident, then I will believe you." Li Zixuan smiled and said, "Thank you for your trust, Grand General." Then, he suddenly remembered that he wanted to ask Duan Zixuan for something. He held his fists and said, "Grand General, I heard that you have a map of the Nyosho mountain area. I wonder if you can lend it to me?" Map of the Nyosho mountain? Duan Zixuan was stunned at first, but he reacted quickly. He laughed and said, "Ha ha! Not bad, not bad. The art of war is about the right time, the right place, and the right people. Before the battle, you should first familiarize yourself with the terrain. Adjunct Li is gradually getting better in the art of war." "You flatter me. Since the location of the competition is at the Nyosho mountain, then I will definitely familiarize myself with the terrain of the Nyosho mountain area." Li Zixuan smiled and held his fists together. "Ha ha! That's how it should be." Qiu Xingong nodded and said, "I do have a map of the Nyosho mountain area. It should be more or less accurate. I will ask my guards to send it to your tent later." Li Zixuan's face lit up. He quickly held his fists together and said, "Thank you, Grand General." After embarrassing Qiu Xingong and obtaining the map of the area around Mount Nyosho, Li Zixuan had achieved his goal of this trip. Therefore, he cupped his hands and bid farewell to Duan Zixuan in satisfaction and returned to the tent area of the Wu Battalion. It was noon. It was the time for the soldiers to eat and rest. He also wanted to return to his tent to rest for a while. "Dili? So you are here. It's not easy to find you." When Li Zixuan went to the commander's tent to look for Duan Zixuan, a few soldiers quietly snuck into the Wu Battalion's dining hall. As every soldier in the black armored army was wearing the special vanadium steel plate armor made by the workshop, if one did not look carefully, one would not be able to tell if they were soldiers from the Wu Battalion. One of the soldiers found a man with a scar on his face near the pile of firewood in the north of the dining hall. He then squatted down and greeted him softly. "General Bai, what are you doing here?" The man with a scar was none other than the first injured soldier Li Zishuan met last night, Ding Dali. Hearing the voice, Ding Dali turned his head and looked over. He was slightly stunned. He swallowed the food in his mouth and said in surprise. This was because the person in front of him was an old acquaintance. To be more precise, it was his old superior. Ding Dali used to be a squad leader in Zhuowue, while the man with the surname Bai was called Bai Shanhai. He was a general in their camp. After being selected to join the Black Armored Army, Ding Dali was assigned to the V camp, whereas the man with the surname Bai was assigned to the B camp. In the Black Armored Army, although there was no explicit rule that stated that soldiers were not allowed to go to other battalions, but under normal circumstances, soldiers would rarely visit other battalions. "Hey! Didn't I hear that you were injured yesterday? So I came over to take a look. Also, we are in the Black Armored Army now. I am no longer a general. You can just call me Shanhai." Bai Shanhai patted Ding Dali's shoulder and said with a concerned face. It's just a small injury, just a small injury. It's just a scratch on my leg. The military doctor said that I will be fine in 2 days. Ding Dali was flattered by the sudden concern from his old boss. He scratched his head and chuckled. This idiot did not know that one who is unaccountably solicitous is hiding evil intentions. Bai Shanhai rolled his eyes. Seeing that there was no one around, he moved closer to Ding Dali and whispered, "Dali, how did you get injured? Can you tell me about it?" Chapter 1776. I accidentally fell off the back of a horse during training yesterday and coincidentally hit a wooden pole. In the Black Armored Army, by the pile of firewood outside the Wu barracks, Ding Dali thought for a while before answering Bai Shanhai's question. If someone had asked him yesterday afternoon how he got injured, he would definitely have complained about the new training method and Li Zishuan. But last night, Li Zishuan personally patrolled the barracks, consoled the injured soldiers, and even personally checked on his injuries. This made Ding Dali's impression of Li Zishuan much better. Thus, he didn't tell Bai Shanhai the whole truth. Accidentally fell off the back of a horse? Hearing this, Bai Shanhai's eyes flashed and a hint of disdain appeared at the corner of his mouth. But he quickly covered it up and asked in an incredulous tone, "Dali, who are you trying to fool? When we were in the Zhuowue barracks, your horsemanship was one of the best in our barrack. You're telling me that you accidentally fell off the back of a horse? How is that possible? What's wrong? Now that we're in the Black Armored Army, you're not even willing to tell me the truth? We used to be in the same barracks. You can't possibly disown me just because we're in a different place, right?" When Ding Dali heard this, he was so anxious that sweat started to form on his forehead. He put down his bowl and chopsticks and hurriedly waved his hands. "No, no, no. General Bai, Shanhai, I'm not trying to lie to you. My injury was indeed caused by falling off the back of a horse. Yesterday afternoon, when our barracks were doing charging training, Li Zishuan ordered us to charge forward. If he didn't order us to stop, we couldn't stop. So in the end, my group directly crashed into a wooden pole. But we were all wearing metal armor at that time, so the injury wasn't serious. We'll be fine in 2 days. I accidentally fell off the back of a horse during training yesterday and coincidentally hit a wooden pole. In the Black Armored Army, by the firewood pile outside the kitchen of the Wu barracks, Ding Dali answered Bai Shanhai's question. If someone had asked him yesterday afternoon how he got injured, he would definitely have complained about the new training method and Li Zishuan. But last night Li Zishuan personally patrolled the camp, consoled the injured soldiers, and even personally checked on his injuries. This made Ding Dali have a much better impression of Li Zishuan. As such, he did not tell Bai Shanhai the complete truth. Accidentally fell off the back of a horse? Hearing this, Bai Shanhai's eyes flashed and a trace of disdain appeared at the corner of his mouth. However, he quickly covered it up and asked in an incredulous tone, "Dali, who are you trying to fool? When we were in the Zhuo Wuwei battalion, your horsemanship was one of the best in our battalion. Now you're telling me that you accidentally fell off the back of a horse? How is that possible? What's wrong? Now that we're in the black armored troops, you're not even willing to tell me the truth? We used to be in the same battalion. You can't possibly disown me just because we've changed locations, right?" When Ding Dali heard this, he was so anxious that sweat started to form on his forehead. He put down his bowl and chopsticks and hurriedly waved his hands, saying, "No, no, no. General Bai Shanhai, I'm not trying to lie to you. My injury was indeed caused by falling off the back of a horse. Yesterday afternoon, when our battalion was doing the charging training, Li Zishuan ordered us to charge forward on horseback. If he didn't order us to stop, we couldn't stop. So in the end, my group directly hit a wooden pole. But we were all wearing metal armor at that time, so the injury wasn't serious. We'll be fine in 2 days." Chapter 1777. Every citizen is responsible for the rise and fall of the country. 2 days later, Lantian County's longmen will host a charity event to raise funds for the country in the Qizhou provincial governor's residence. Wang Renbiao read the latest edition of the Tang Daily and frowned. After a while, he put down the newspaper and muttered to himself, "This charity event must be Little Xian's doing. Why are you so sure that the Marquis of Yong'an is behind this?" But according to the reports, Marquis should be training the soldiers in the black armored troops right now? Hearing this, Ling Yuyao frowned and asked doubtfully. Although Wang Renbiao's voice was soft, it did not escape her ears. After all, she was a martial arts expert close to the Grandmaster realm. "Kiki, although Little Xian is in the army, he can send someone else to do this. Look at this, the Yan Huang Chamber of Commerce, a charity event. Who else but Little Xian could come up with such an idea?" Wang Renbiao smiled and pointed at the article in the newspaper. After analyzing it with Ling Yuyao, he stood up with his hands behind his back. "Although I don't know how much money the imperial court is lacking, the fact that His Majesty allowed Little Xian to gather the merchants to raise funds for the army shows that the imperial court is somewhat stretched in the war with the Turks. Only by borrowing the strength of the citizens can we raise enough funds for the army. I'm afraid the situation is not optimistic. Every citizen was responsible for the rise and fall of the country. Moreover, Wang Renbiao was not a commoner, but the eldest son of the Wang family of Taiyuan and the Qizhou provincial governor. Knowing that the imperial court was in trouble, he would naturally be worried. Then, does young master mean that our Wang family should participate in this charity event?" After a moment of silence, Ling Yuyao asked softly, "Our Wang family, Kiki? Can I still represent the Wang family?" Wang Renbiao suddenly smiled bitterly, a trace of coldness and desolation on his lips. Although he didn't know why Princess Tang and Wang Yu had suddenly agreed to his marriage with Li Jingqiu, Wang Renbiao knew that his marriage with Li Jingqiu would definitely anger the elders of the Wang clan. This meant that the resources of the Wang clan would no longer be given to him, and his status as the eldest son of the Wang clan would only exist in name. The elders of the Wang clan would nominate another descendant of the Wang clan to become the future patriarch of the Wang clan. The news of Wang Renbiao's upcoming marriage had been released for so long, but none of the elders of the Wang family were willing to come to Qizhou for the banquet. This meant that Wang Renbiao was about to be cold-shouldered and marginalized by the family. Young master, since the patriarch and the eldest princess have agreed to the marriage between you and Miss Li, I presume the patriarch won't say anything else, right? Ling Yuyao had been by Wang Renbiao's side for more than 10 years. How could she not tell what Wang Renbiao was thinking at this moment? Although she said so, she also knew that this situation was very unlikely. With the nature of the top aristocratic families, like the 5 surnames and 7 hopes, Wang Renbiao was very likely to be abandoned by the Wang family. How could Wang Renbiao not understand this? He shook his head and said, "He. Actually, I don't care about the identity of the Wang family's eldest son. Yao you should understand me. This identity is more of a restriction than a benefit to me. Rather than being restricted by the family, I'm more willing to be an ordinary person, do what I like, and love the person I like. Sometimes I'm quite envious of Xiao Xian. He was able to have the status and wealth he has today all because of his own hard work, so he can do as he pleases and not be restricted by his family. Although I was born with everything, those things don't belong to me. They come from the family and the family can take them back at any time. This is not what I want." Hearing this, Ling Yuyao couldn't help but be silent. She lost her parents when she was young and was adopted by the Wang family. She was trained to be a secret guard. Regarding the internal situation of the Wang family, she knew it like the back of her hand. Naturally, she knew that what Wang Renbiao said was the truth. "Young master, we won't be going to the fundraiser 2 days later." After a moment of silence, Ling Yuyao asked. "No. We have to go. Of course we have to go." Unexpectedly, Wang Renbiao shook his head and said firmly, "Since this matter was initiated by Xiao Xian, it's only right for us to help. Although I may not be able to use the Wang family's resources in the future, I should be able to transfer a lot of money from the shops in my hands. Send a message to the shopkeeper of the Craftsman Pavilion and ask him to attend the fundraiser in my place 2 days later and donate 30,000 strings of cash." Wang Renbiao had previously invested in the Yan Huang Chamber of Commerce and could be considered one of the earliest members of the Yan Huang Chamber of Commerce. The shops under him had received preferential treatment from the Yan Huang Chamber of Commerce in terms of resources and had earned quite a bit of money in the past year. 30,000 strings of cash. Young master wants to donate so much? Ling Yuyao wasn't surprised that Wang Renbiao wanted to help Li Zixuan. She was surprised that Wang Renbiao wanted to donate so much money at once. 30,000 strings of cash might be a drop in the ocean to the Wang family, but to Wang Renbiao, who was about to be abandoned by the Wang family, this 30,000 strings of cash could very well affect his livelihood for the rest of his life. "Xiao Xian is my brother. Now that the court is in trouble and His Majesty has given Xiao Xian an order, although I don't know how much military funds will be collected for Xiao Xian to complete his mission, as his brother, I should do my best to help him. Moreover, Xiao Xian was the one who brought me and Jingchu together. If not for him, Jingchu and I would have become Jiao Zhongqing and Lu Longji, right? A mere 30,000 strings of cash isn't enough to repay Xiao Xian's kindness to me." Wang Renbiao's gaze was deep as he spoke faintly. Of course, he knew that he might be abandoned by the Wang family. Moreover, after being abandoned by the Wang family, money would become a very important thing to him. But so what? Was he supposed to stand by and watch when his brother was in trouble? That was impossible. "Yes, young master. Yuyao will send a message to the shopkeeper of the Craftsman Pavilion and ask him to attend the fundraiser in 2 days." Ling Yuyao bowed. Go Yao." Wang Renbiao nodded and the study instantly quieted down. Chapter 1778. Yes, there's a mountain here, but it's not high or steep. You can climb it on horseback. How high is not high? 100 feet or 100 feet? How would I remember that? Didn't you say that you're good at memorizing directions? That you can remember everything you've been there once? I did remember that, but I've forgotten it now. You? Think about it carefully. If you can't remember, you can go and train. I'll ask Zhiping to double your training today. Don't. Xiao Xian, wait, I think I remember. That mountain is about 500 feet tall and has a radius of half a mile. There are many pine trees on the mountain. Yes. What about here? The map shows that there's a mountain here too. Do you remember how high it is? In the afternoon, in Li Zixuan's tent, he and Qing Chumo were working on a military sand table of Nyosho Mountain. Qing Chumo suddenly realized that he had made a wrong decision. Assisting Li Zixuan in making the sand table was no easier than training on the drill ground. Li Zixuan had asked too many questions. He had asked about the height of the mountain, the size of the area, the density of the forest, and the number of mountain paths around the mountain. He used to go hunting on Nyosho Mountain with a bunch of rich kids in Chang'an. However, he was there for fun and not to survey the terrain. How would he remember all these details? But it was too late for regrets now. If he wanted to get off the pirate ship now, his training today would be doubled. Wouldn't that kill him? Thus, Qing Chumo felt like his head was about to explode for the entire afternoon. It was too much for him to handle. There's a mountain here, but it's not high or steep. You can go up on horseback. How high is not high? 100 feet or 100 feet? How would I remember that? Didn't you say that you're good at memorizing directions? That you can remember all the places you've been to once? I remembered that, but I've forgotten it now. You? Why don't you King think about it again? If you can't remember, then go practice. I'll ask Zhiping to double your training today. And no. Little Xian, wait a moment, I seem to remember something. That mountain is about 500 zhang tall and has a radius of half a li. There are many pine trees on the mountain. Yes. What about here? The map shows that there is also a peak here. Do you still remember how high it is? In the afternoon, in Li Zixuan's tent of the Black Armored Army, he and Qing Chumo were rushing to make a military sand table of Mount Nyosho according to the map. Qing Chumo suddenly realized that he had made a wrong decision. Assisting Li Zixuan in making the sand table in the tent was no easier than practicing on the drill ground. This was because Li Zixuan had asked too many questions in detail. He had asked about the height of the mountain, how wide it was, how dense the forest was, and how many mountain paths there were around the mountain. He used to go hunting on Mount Nyosho with a bunch of second-generation rich kids in Chang'an. However, he was there for fun and not to survey the terrain. How could he remember all these details? But it was too late for regrets. If he wanted to get off the pirate ship now, his training today would be doubled. Wouldn't that be asking for his life? Thus, Qing Chumo felt like his head was about to explode for the entire afternoon. It was too much for his brain. Chapter 1779. What? He wants to donate 10,000 strings of cash to the imperial court? In the back hall of the Lantian County Yamen, everyone exclaimed after hearing County Magistrate He's words. If it was in the past, all the taxes collected by the Lantian County Yamen had to be handed over to the imperial court. No one dared to withhold them, unless they were tired of living. However, ever since Li Er bestowed the entire Lantian County to Li Zixuan as a fief, Li Zixuan became the true king of Lantian County. The taxes collected by the entire Lantian County did not need to be handed over to the imperial court. Instead, they belonged to Li Zixuan's private property. However, ever since Li Zixuan returned to Chang'an from Mount Longhu, his restaurant, Chi Chu Pavilion, Chi Chu Culture, and various other businesses flourished. In just over a year, he had earned such a huge fortune. Naturally, he did not care about the pitiful amount of taxes collected by a small Lantian county. Last year, Li Zixuan used his own money to build the Tang Alliance Medical Center in Lantian County. After that, He officially handed over the rights to use the taxes collected by Lantian County to County Magistrate He, the Lantian County Yamen. He only had one request for County Magistrate He, which was to take from the people and use it for the people. The taxes collected by the Lantian County Yamen every year had to be used to improve the livelihood of the people. For example, building roads, paving bridges, building schools, and so on. A few months ago, Lantian County underwent a major renovation. The roads in the city were all replaced with wide and flat cement road. All these projects used the county yamen's money. Even if the county yamen could not fork out so much money at once, it was fine. They could borrow from Yanwang Bank first and return the money when the taxes were collected next month. This was a little like borrowing money in modern society. Therefore, when they heard that county magistrate he wanted to donate 10,000 strings of cash from the county yamen's treasury, everyone present could not help but feel a little pained. This was because the money belonged to the county yamen. Once it was donated, the county yamen's treasury would shrink by a lot. If the county yamen were to carry out any more projects to improve the livelihood of the people, it was very likely that they would face a financial crisis. County Magistrate, isn't 10,000 strings of cash a little too much? County Magistrate Meng swallowed his saliva and asked tentatively. Too much. Of course it was a lot. In the past, these county officials would never be able to come into contact with 10,000 strings of cash. This was because in the entire Great Tang, there was not a single county that could collect more than 10,000 strings of cash every year. Yes. County Magistrate. According to Marquis's plan, the county still had to expand the city and lay out electric wires so that the people in the city could use electric light. Both of these projects required a lot of money. If we donate 10,000 strings of coins, we won't be able to push forward the next two projects. After a moment of hesitation, Registrar Wang cupped his hands and said, "What? You want to donate 10,000 strings of cash to the imperial court?" In the back hall of the Lantian County Yamen, everyone couldn't help but exclaim after hearing County Magistrate He's words. If it was in the past, all the taxes collected by the Lantian County Yamen every year had to be handed over to the imperial court. No one dared to withhold them unless they were tired of living. However, ever since Li Zishuan bestowed the entire Lantian County to Li Zishuan as a fief, Li Zishuan became the true king of Lantian County. The taxes collected by the entire Lantian County did not have to be handed over to the imperial court. Instead, they belonged to Li Zishuan's private property. However, ever since Li Zishuan returned to Chang'an from Mount Longhu, his restaurant, Chi Chu Pavilion, Chi Chu Culture, and various other businesses were doing well. In just over a year, he had earned a huge fortune. Naturally, he didn't care about the pitiful amount of taxes collected by a small Lantian county. Last year, Li Zishuan used his own money to build the Tang Alliance Medical Center in Lantian County. After that, he officially handed over the rights to use the taxes collected by Lantian County to County Magistrate He, the Lantian County Yamen. He only had one request for County Magistrate He, which was to take from the people and use it for the people. The taxes collected by the Lantian County Yamen every year had to be used to improve the livelihood of the people. For example, building roads and bridges, building schools, and so on. A few months ago, Lantian County underwent a major renovation. The roads in the city were all replaced with wide and flat cement road. All these projects used the county yamen's money. Even if the county yamen couldn't take out so much money at once, it didn't matter. They could borrow from the Yanwang Bank first. When the next month's taxes were collected, they could return the money. This was a little like borrowing money in modern society. Therefore, when they heard that county magistrate he wanted to donate 10,000 strings of cash from the county yamen's treasury, they couldn't help but feel a little pained. This was because the money belonged to the county yamen. Once it was donated, the county yamen's treasury would shrink by a lot. If the county yamen were to carry out any projects to improve the livelihood of the people, it was very likely that they would be faced with a shortage of money. County Magistrate, isn't 10,000 strings of cash a little too much? County Magistrate Meng swallowed his saliva and asked tentatively. Too much. Of course it was too much. If it was in the past, these county yamen officials would never be able to come into contact with 10,000 strings of cash. This was because in the entire Tang Empire, there wasn't a single county that could collect more than 10,000 strings of cash every year. That's right. County Magistrate. According to Marquis' plan, the county will have to expand the city and lay out electricity lines so that the people in the city can use electric light. These two projects will require a lot of money. If we donate 10,000 strings of cash, we won't be able to carry out these two projects. Registrar Wang hesitated for a moment, then clasped his hands and said. Chapter 1780. Bang, bang, bang. In the Black Armored Army's camp, outside the kitchen of the Wu barracks, a soldier was sweating profusely under the setting sun. As he swung his axe again and again, round logs were chopped into halves. The series of actions could be said to be done in one go, clean and neat. It was pleasing to the eye. However, the soldier's words were not so pleasing to the eye. Hey! I am the son of a duke. How can I be reduced to chopping firewood in the army? This is so unfair. Xiao Xian, you're torturing me on purpose. Tonight, when you fall asleep, I'll stuff Bao Lin's footwear at your bedside. Hey! F***ck. How much firewood does the kitchen burn in a day? Is there a need to chop so much? Could it be that the kid just now was pranking me too? The person chopping the firewood was Ching Chumo. After all, this fellow knew martial arts. Chopping firewood was a piece of cake for him. His efficiency was 3 to 4 times faster than the average person. Although his movements were smooth and fluid, Ching Chumo was cursing as he chopped the firewood. He even threatened to prank Li Zixuan at night. But this fellow was too ignorant. Ever since he entered the army camp, when was he not the first to fall asleep? If he really wanted to prank someone, it would be Li Zixuan pranking him, not Li Zixuan. Phew! I'm finally done chopping. People who knew martial arts were different. Ordinary people would need more than 2 hours to chop all the firewood, but Ching Chumo only used half an hour to chop all the firewood. After he finished chopping, this guy began to organize the pile of firewood in front of him, piling them up into piles. There should still be more than an hour before the training ends, right? The food in the kitchen is not ready yet. Where should I go? After everything was done, Ching Chumo couldn't help but feel troubled. At this moment, the soldiers on the training ground were still training. If he were to return to his tent, Li Zixuan might chase him to the training ground to train with the other soldiers. However, if he were to stay in the kitchen, he would have nothing to do. Because the food was not ready yet, he couldn't eat even if he wanted to. Could it be that he, the son of a duke, had to cook for others? Ching Chumo quickly shook his head, and threw this terrifying thought out of his mind. Where was the hottest place in the summer? It must be the kitchen. In the kitchen of the Wu battalion, there were many stoves that were burning firewood at the same time. It was simply not a place for humans. He couldn't go back to his tent, he couldn't stay in the kitchen. He didn't want to go to the training ground. Even if he wandered around the barracks, he would be punished if he was caught. Why don't I hide in the pile of firewood and rest for a while? Looking at the neat piles of firewood under the shed, Ching Chumo suddenly had an idea, and an idea came to his mind. Since he couldn't go anywhere, he might as well hide here and slack off for a while. The cooks in the kitchen still didn't know that he had finished chopping the firewood so quickly. By the time they found out, it would be almost time for dinner. On the other hand, Li Zixuan must still think that he was helping to cook in the kitchen. Naturally, he wouldn't find out that he was slacking off. This was a good plan that could kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Ching Chumo couldn't help but praise himself for his cleverness. Then, he walked to the pile of firewood and stood against the wall. Next, he placed a pile of firewood in front of him and beside him. Then, he squatted down and directly leaned against the wall to enjoy the shade. This pile of firewood was next to the kitchen. There was a shed on top of it. It was ventilated from 3 sides. At this moment, there was a slight southeast wind blowing. Ching Chumo didn't feel hot staying inside. Anyway, it was much cooler than the kitchen. If someone passed by here, they would only see the pile of firewood and wouldn't see a lazy guy slacking off in the pile of firewood. Sigh. Finally, I can take a break. Ching Chumo leaned against the wall comfortably, feeling the slight breeze from the gaps of the pile of firewood. His nerves relaxed and for a moment, he actually felt a little sleepy. This afternoon, helping Li Zixuan to make the sandbox had consumed too many of his brain cells. Now that he was relaxed, his upper and lower eyelids began to fight. Then he actually fell asleep in the pile of firewood. Chapter 1781. After dinner, Li Zixuan returned to his tent with Yuqi Baolin. Although Sun Jiping also wanted to go over and take a look at the sand table, he still had some military matters to attend to, so he could only wait until nighttime. As for Ching Chumo's whereabouts, although Li Zixuan was worried, he wasn't too worried. Just as he said earlier, the Black Armored Army's gate was sealed. Without Duan Zixuan's permission, no one could leave the camp. Although Ching Chumo was the son of a duke, military orders came first in the army. Without Duan Zixuan's permission, he wouldn't be able to leave the gate. Therefore, Li Zixuan guessed that Ching Chumo was most likely hiding somewhere and sneaking around. When nighttime came, this fellow would definitely return to his tent to sleep. It wouldn't be too late to deal with him then. Li Zixuan and Sun Jiping went to the kitchen early, so they ate quickly. After they left, there were still many soldiers who had just gotten their food. Ding Dali was one of them. Although this person was usually carefree and straightforward, he liked to eat quietly and didn't like to talk to others at this time. Therefore, he usually ate alone by the firewood on the east side of the kitchen. Tonight was no exception. "Hey, Dali, eat." Just as Ding Dali was half full, a rough voice suddenly sounded in his ears. Ding Dali turned his head and saw that it was Bai Shanhai who had come to deliver medicine to him in the afternoon. "Shanhai? You're here? Take a seat, take a seat. Have you eaten?" Ding Dali hurriedly pointed to a wooden stool beside him and greeted Bai Shanhai warmly. It was completely different from the coldness in the afternoon. Now, Ding Dali was extremely warm towards Bai Shanhai. The difference in his attitude before was like heaven and earth. The reason was because of what Bai Shanhai had said to Ding Dali in the afternoon, which made Ding Dali feel guilty. It was because of this guilt that Ding Dali let down his guard against Bai Shanhai and even became somewhat warm towards him. "I've already eaten." Bai Shanhai waved his hand and sat down beside Ding Dali. In fact, Bai Shanhai was pleasantly surprised by Ding Dali's enthusiasm. This proved that the act he put on at noon was not in vain. To him, things were developing in a good direction. After sitting down, Bai Shanhai pretended to be concerned. He looked at Ding Dali and asked, "Dali, have you applied the ointment I gave you this afternoon? Is your leg better now?" "It's almost healed. It wasn't a serious injury in the first place, and the medicine you gave me was very special. After applying it, it felt cool and refreshing. When I was training in the afternoon, I felt the pain in my leg lessen a lot. I think it should be completely healed by tomorrow," Ding Dali quickly replied. Then he hesitated for a moment and said, "Well, Shanhai, I was a little harsh with my words at noon. Don't take it to heart. I don't know what's good for me. I apologize to you. Just treat me as a fart and let me go, okay?" After saying that, he couldn't help but look at Bai Shanhai anxiously. Hearing this, Bai Shanhai patted Ding Dali's shoulder and laughed loudly. "Ha ha! You and I are brothers, and we used to be comrades. I won't take such small things to heart. But Dolly, as your brother, there's something I don't know if I should say. Towards the end, Bai Shanhai seemed to want to say something but stopped. When Ding Dolly heard that Bai Shanhai wasn't angry about what happened at noon, he couldn't help but feel a little happy. But after hearing the last sentence, he immediately patted his chest and said seriously, Shanhai, what are you saying? I didn't know before, but now I know. You really treat me as a brother. If you have something to say, just say it. The two of them were talking happily, and it was really a scene of brotherly affection. But neither of them noticed that in the pile of firewood behind them, there was a lazy guy who had just woken up from his sleep. How did I fall asleep? Why is it so noisy outside? Could it be that the army's training has ended? Ching Chumo, who had been lazing around in the pile of firewood and sleeping for more than an hour, suddenly heard a burst of noise. He couldn't help but rub his sleepy eyes, and his consciousness gradually became clear. Just as he was about to stand up, he heard Bai Shanhai say in a low voice from outside, Don't worry. Dolly, I heard that this Li Kanjun seems to treat people peacefully and has the style of a gentleman. But in private, he is vicious and cruel, and likes to deliberately torture people. Some of the servants in his residence have been tortured to the point where they can't even die. The reason why his fierce reputation hasn't spread outside is because this person is extremely good at disguising himself. He is one person in front of people, and another person in private. So when you guys hit the wooden stakes and got injured yesterday, I feel that it wasn't because Li Kanjun wanted to train you to obey orders, but because he likes to torture people. Think about it, at that time, he was able to torture you for fun, and he even had such a dignified excuse. How could he let go of such a good opportunity? Hearing this, no matter how stupid Ching Chumo was, he felt that something was wrong. He, who had wanted to stand up, quickly sat back down. What? How is that possible? When Ding Dolly heard Bai Shanhai's words, his first reaction was disbelief. He stared and said, before Li Kanjun entered the military camp, he might have led the Sky Pheasant Brigade to exterminate the locusts in dozens of counties in the north. He solved the locust plague of the local people and saved countless people. How could he be the vicious and cruel person you are talking about? Why does this voice sound so familiar? Ching Chumo, who was hiding in the pile of firewood and eavesdropping, couldn't help but feel that Ding Dolly's voice was familiar. After seriously recalling in his mind for a moment, Ching Chumo finally remembered the owner of this voice. Isn't this Ding Dolly, who I met last night when I was patrolling with Xiao Xian? Why is he here? No. Who is he talking to? It doesn't sound like he's from our camp. Last night, Ching Chumo had been patrolling the camp with Li Zixuan. Although this fellow felt bored halfway through and slipped back to sleep, the camp that Ding Dolly was in was the first one they patrolled yesterday. At that time, Ching Chumo was present, so he could quickly recognize Ding Dolly's voice. However, he had never heard this other voice before. But from the words that person said, it was obvious that he was deliberately trying to sow discord. This made Ching Chumo feel a sense of vigilance. He planned to hide in the pile of firewood and eavesdrop for a while, waiting to see what would happen next. Ching Chumo was a simple and honest person, but he was not stupid. He still understood the principle of catching an adulterer in bed and catching a thief with the stolen good. Outside the pile of firewood, Bai Shanhai's eyes flashed and he said in a low voice, I said, that's just his appearance. Kanjunli is the best at one thing on the surface and another behind the scenes. Besides, didn't he do all that for the sake of being promoted? Didn't you see that after he returned from the north, he received a lot of rewards from His Majesty? That's true. After the Sky Rooster Brigade returned from the north, Li Zixuan was conferred the title of governor of Qingzhou. The whole of Qingzhou became his fief. So Ding Dolly thought for a while and nodded subconsciously. But then he realized that something was wrong and quickly said, that's not right. Last night, I heard from Kanjunli that our battalion will have a competition with your 2nd Battalion in 9 days. So during this period of time, he will arrange a heavier training mission for us, and some of us will inevitably get injured. But this is all because Kanjunli wants us to become stronger, so that we can defeat you in the competition in 9 days. Hearing this, Bai Shanhai's expression froze. But after a while, he reacted. He patted Ding Dali's shoulder and said, Dali, you are really too young. Do you know how the competition in 9 days came about? Kanjunli saw that General Chiu had rich experience and outstanding ability, so he wanted to chase General Chiu out of the Black Armored Army and force General Chiu to agree to the competition. As long as your Wu battalion wins this competition, General Chiu will leave the Black Armored Army. He said that he is training you like this for your own good, but in reality, he is training you like this for himself. He wants to get rid of the dissidents and dominate the Black Armored Army. That's why he wants you to train so hard, but doesn't care if you live or die. As long as you can win the competition, even if you get injured, he won't care. F***ck. Who the hell is this bastard? How dare he slander Xiao Xian like this? Hearing this, Qing Chumo couldn't help but be furious. More than an hour ago, although he had secretly made up stories about Li Zixuan, and even wanted to take advantage of Li Zixuan's sleep and stuff Yuqi Baolin's smelly socks to Li Zixuan's bed, he didn't allow others to badmouth Li Zixuan. Because no matter what, Li Zixuan was the most important brother in his life to Qing Chumo. What? There's such a thing? Outside the pile of firewood, Ding Dali said in shock. I only know that there will be a competition with your 2nd Battalion in 9 days, but I didn't know that this competition was initiated by General Li. But our battalion can't even defeat your battalion. Why would General Li do this? It's because you are no match for us. That's why General Li did this. Hearing this, Bai Shanhai laughed coldly and said, Think about it. If the Wu battalion is stronger than the 2nd Battalion, then how can General Li prove that his ability is better than General Chiu's? He wants to use this competition to build his reputation in the Black Armored Army and force General Chiu to leave the Black Armored Army. And you guys are just stepping stones on Li Zixuan's path to success. He only sees you guys as tools, and doesn't care if you live or die. That's why he came up with such a cruel training method, making you guys train so hard, and even injuring both men and horses. What? It's actually like this? Ding Dali's face turned pale when he heard this. What Bai Shanhai said was completely different from the image he had of Li Zixuan in his mind, and it was hard for him to accept it. Dali. Seeing Ding Dali's pale face and dazed eyes, the corners of Bai Shanhai's mouth curled up into an imperceptible smile. He stepped forward and patted Ding Dali's shoulder, deciding to follow up on his victory. With a deep expression, he said, The 2nd Battalion can lose this competition because we can't bear to see you guys being tortured by General Li like this. We are all in the Black Armored Army, and that means we are fellow soldiers, brothers. Now you guys have only suffered some light injuries, but who knows if you will lose your lives in the future. You guys didn't die on the battlefield, but on the drill ground. To the Black Armored Army, this is a great humiliation. Ding Dali rubbed his forehead with a pained expression. He waved his hand and said, Shanhai, don't say any more. I'm just a small soldier in the Wu battalion. Even if I know all this, I can't do anything. It's better for me to continue being muddle-headed. Bai Shanhai saw that the time was ripe, and his eyes flashed with joy. He hurriedly said, Dali, who said you can't do anything? Brother, let me tell you the truth. The lieutenant of our battalion has long been sick of General Li's atrocities. The medicine I gave you this afternoon was given to us by our lieutenant. Our lieutenant will definitely have a way to take down Li Zixuan and stop him from harming you guys. Let's do it this way. Tonight at midnight you call the other wounded brothers in your camp over here. First, I'll give them some medicine. Second, I'll invite our captain over. He'll tell you how to resist Adjunct Lee's atrocities next. How about it? But what if we are discovered? Ding Dolly's eyes flashed with a hint of hesitation, but he was still hesitant. Seeing this, Bai Shanhai patted him on the shoulder and said, Dolly, don't worry. Our black armored army is not something that Li Zishuan can cover with one hand. If anything happens, our lieutenant will take care of it for you. At the very least, there is still General Chiu. General Chiu is a righteous person. When the time comes, he will definitely uphold justice for us. You have to know that you are not only saving yourself, but also saving your brothers in the battalion. Can you bear to see them being abused by Li Zishuan? With Li Zishuan's atrocious personality, they will be crippled sooner or later. Bai Shanhai's last sentence had struck a chord in Ding Dolly's heart. He had no other good points, but he was a righteous person. Hearing this, the originally hesitant Ding Dolly suddenly became determined. He looked at Bai Shanhai and nodded heavily. Okay. Brother Shanhai, I will listen to you. Tonight at midnight, I will bring my brothers here to meet your lieutenant. Let's see what he can do. Good. Dolly. You are still as righteous as before. I, Bai Shanhai, did not misjudge you. Hearing this, Bai Shanhai could not help but become excited. He heavily punched Ding Dolly's chest and said excitedly, Then it's settled. I will go back to the battalion now and inform our lieutenant. Tonight at midnight, I will not leave until I see you. All right. Li Zishuan is very good at disguising himself. Most of the soldiers in the battalion have been deceived by his hypocrisy. You must be careful when you do things. Do not make a fuss about it to avoid being obstructed. At the end, Bai Shanhai reminded him worriedly. Brother Shanhai, I know. Don't worry. Ding Dolly nodded. Only then did Bai Shanhai relax and leave. Chapter 1782. Damn you, Ding Dolly. Last night, Xiao Xian even personally treated your injuries. Today, you're going to change sides just because someone instigated you? What AF * King Ingrate. After Ding Dolly and Bai Shanhai left, Ching Chumo walked out from the pile of firewood. Looking at the two's departing figures, he waved his fist and said hatefully, No. I have to tell Xiao Xian about this. Ching Chumo muttered to himself in a low voice. But as soon as he took a step forward, he retracted his foot. He rubbed his growling stomach and sighed, Alas! Filling my stomach is more important. If I miss this meal, I can only wait until tomorrow morning to eat. I can still tell Xiao Xian after I eat. Sure enough, eating was the most important thing in the world. To Ching Chumo, nothing in this world was more important than filling his stomach. However, he knew that Ding Dolly and Bai Shanhai wouldn't be able to do anything in such a short time, so he was in the mood to eat first. In the tent, Li Zishuan waited for a long time, but Ching Chumo still hadn't returned. He, who wasn't worried at first, gradually became anxious. Ching Chumo and Yuchi Baolin had entered the army camp to help him. If either of them were to meet with mishap in the black armored army, then Li Zishuan would have let down Ching Yaojin and Yuchi Jingda. Moreover, he would feel guilty for the rest of his life. Just as Li Zishuan was about to personally go out to look for Ching Chumo, a series of footsteps finally came from outside the tent, followed by Ching Chumo's shouts. Xiao Xian, Xiao Xian. Something has happened. The curtain was lifted and Ching Chumo walked in quickly. Li Zishuan took a step forward and blocked him. His voice was cold as he said, Chumo, where did you go during dinner? Seeing that Li Zishuan had the intention of denouncing him, Ching Chumo couldn't help but shrink his neck. Although he said that he wanted to prank Li Zishuan behind his back, when they met face to face, this guy immediately cowered. Because he really couldn't beat him. Cough cough. Xiao Xian. Let's not talk about this first. I found something very important. Hurry up and listen to me. Ching Chumo quickly changed the topic and said, No matter what it is, You have to answer the question I just asked. Li Zixuan, who was well aware of Qing Chumo's nature, was not moved in the slightest. With a cold expression, he looked at Qing Chumo and said indifferently, Xiao Xian, I'm not joking with you this time. I really found something very important. Someone is trying to sow discord among our soldiers. I think it's someone from the 2nd Battalion. Just now, outside the kitchen, that person went to look for Ding Dali. I heard everything they said. That person seems to be called Shan Hai or something. In order to prove his innocence, Qing Chumo hurriedly told Li Zixuan everything he saw and heard outside the kitchen. Seeing that Qing Chumo spoke in a methodical manner and didn't seem to be lying, Li Zixuan's expression immediately became serious. Huh? Yamacho, didn't we go see this Sun Dali last night? Yamacho, you even personally treated his injuries. How could he believe that person's malicious words about you, Yamacho? After Qing Chumo finished speaking, before Li Zixuan could say anything, Yuchi Bao Lin couldn't help but speak up angrily. Ding Dali and I didn't have a close relationship before this. It's impossible for him to believe me just based on what I said last night. And from what Chumo said, this person called Shan Hai seems to be familiar with Ding Dali. Therefore, it's understandable that Ding Dali would turn against him. Li Zixuan patted Bao Lin's shoulder to calm him down. Then he clasped his hands behind his back and said, The truly despicable person is that person called Shan Hai. He said that he came from the 2nd Battalion, and this matter was ordered by 2nd Battalion Lieutenant Sun Tao. This way it all makes sense. How does it make sense? Xiao Xian, don't just say half of it. Qing Chumo was listening attentively when Li Zixuan suddenly stopped talking. This made him very anxious, so he couldn't help but ask. Li Zixuan cast a sidelong glance at the idiot and said, Why don't you tell me where you went just now? How did you hear the conversation between Sun Tao and that person? And how did you not get discovered by them? If I tell you, Xiao Xian, can you not be angry? Qing Chumo scratched his head, troubled. You tell me first. Li Zixuan said calmly with a straight face. Okay. I'll talk. Although Li Zixuan's face was expressionless, Qing Chumo, who knew Li Zixuan's character well, knew what Li Zixuan's expression meant. It meant that he would be lenient if he confessed, and severe if he resisted. Thus, he lowered his head and honestly confessed, You're right. Earlier, you asked me to help in the kitchen, so I went. In the end, the kitchen staff asked me to help them chop firewood. I had a lot of strength, so I finished chopping very quickly. But after I finished chopping, I didn't know where to go, so I rested in the firewood pile for a while. Who knew that I would accidentally fall asleep? When I woke up, I heard Ding Dali and that mountain sea guy plotting something outside the firewood pile. I saw that they didn't have me, so I quietly eavesdropped. After that, you know everything. You always think about slacking off every day. Look at how steady Bao Lin is in his training all day. Li Zixuan was very smart. How could he not guess why Qing Chumo didn't return to the tent after chopping the firewood? He glared at him and said. Qing Chumo knew that he was in the wrong. He shrunk his neck and whispered, If I didn't slack off, how could I have heard their conspiracy? Li Zixuan was so angry that he laughed. He pointed at Qing Chumo and said, So not only did you not do anything wrong, but you also did something good? Should I ask the general to reward you? Qing Chumo laughed awkwardly. He quickly waved his hand and said, Ha ha. That's not necessary. I don't need any reward. Oh right, Xiao Xian, you haven't finished what you said just now. You can continue. Encountering such a shameless guy, Li Zixuan didn't know what to do. He secretly rolled his eyes and said, It's obvious that someone is trying to instigate the soldiers of the Wu Battalion who got injured during the training. They are trying to sow discord between me and the soldiers. They are trying to disturb the morale of the soldiers. Once the morale of the soldiers is disturbed, We don't even need to compete with the 2nd Battalion 9 days later. We can just admit defeat." Hearing that, Ching Chumo stared at him and said with righteous indignation, "What? In that case, this matter must have been secretly arranged by that bastard Sun Tao? That son of a bitch is really a sinister person. He can't beat the Wu Battalion head-on, so he decided to stab us in the back. Pooh! When I meet him one day, I'll definitely beat him to death." "Shut up!" Li Zixuan quickly interrupted Ching Chumo and said, "Private fights are strictly prohibited in the military. Even if Sun Tao is the mastermind behind this, he should be punished according to military law. You better be honest and don't get yourself into trouble. Besides, we don't have any evidence to prove that this is Sun Tao's doing. So Chumo, don't act rashly." "Oh, what? What do you mean we don't have any evidence to prove that this is Sun Tao's doing? This is what the guy named Shan Hai said himself. Isn't the evidence obvious?" Ching Chumo responded subconsciously, but he immediately refuted. Li Zixuan sighed and explained, "As the saying goes, to catch a thief, you need the stolen goods. These are only your side of the story. It's not enough to be used as evidence. And even if we take this guy down, he will deny it. In this way, not only will we not be able to find out the real culprit, we will also alert the enemy and make the mastermind more vigilant. In this way, we won't be able to guard against him in the future." "Then what should we do? We can't just watch them try to drive a wedge between our brothers, right?" Ching Chumo scratched his head out of habit when he was unable to make a decision. Li Zixuan shook his head and said, "Since we know about their conspiracy, there is no reason for us to sit back and do nothing. It's just that we don't have enough evidence, so we can only beat them at their own game. Chumo Baolin, come here." Li Zixuan waved to Ching Chumo and Yuqi Baolin. The two hurriedly moved their heads over. Li Zixuan was about to speak when he smelled a strange smell. He quickly retreated and waved his hand. "Ching Chumo, how long has it been since you last bathed? Master, why did you come back today?" At 7:30, the sky was not completely dark yet. Ching Yaojin was dressed in martial attire and rode back to Duke Lu's residence. Madame Ching heard the commotion and came out from the backyard. When she saw Ching Yaojin, she hurriedly went up and greeted him. Now that the 12 guards of the capital had all entered the closed training phase, the commanding general of the army usually stayed in the barracks day and night to train the soldiers. However, in comparison, the black armored troops had just been expanded and their training was heavier. The management of the generals and soldiers in the army was stricter. The other armies were not as strict as the black armored troop. If the commanding general had something to do, he could still leave the barracks. But even so, Ching Yaojin had not returned home to sleep for several nights. So when Madame Ching saw Ching Yaojin, she was a little surprised. "Hey, I came back for some matters." Ching Yaojin dismounted and handed the reins to the guards in the residence, as he replied to Madame Ching. "Master, have you eaten yet?" Madame Ching asked. "Not yet. Just ask the kitchen to prepare 2 dishes and a pot of good wine. After a busy day, this old man is starving," Ching Yaojin said loudly. With that, he walked towards the main hall in the front yard. Half an hour later, in the main hall of the Ching residence, Ching Yaojin was drinking wine and eating meat with relish. He was eating happily. Madame Ching, who had already eaten dinner, sat at the side and watched Ching Yaojin eat heartily. She could not help but think that her husband came back tonight because he had enough of the coarse grain in the army and came back to improve his diet. "Madam, have you seen the Tang daily today?" Just as Madame Ching was letting her imagination run wild, Ching Yaojin finally spoke. He chewed on his food and spoke with a lisp. "I've seen it. Why are you asking this, master?" Madame Ching, who had regained her senses, asked curiously. 2 days later, Lantian County will be holding that fundraising event. At that time, you can ask the shopkeeper of one of our shops to take 5,000 strings of money and donate it to Lantian County. Qing Yaojin raised his head and said to Madame Qing. Then, he happily drank another small cup of wine. He was very satisfied. Things were different now. Ever since Duke Lu's mansion hitched a ride on Li Zixuan's Get Rich Express last year, the mansion's monthly income was at least a few thousand strings of coins. Over the past year, not only were many old pavilions rebuilt, even the tables and chairs in the mansion were replaced with new ones. The Qing family was no longer the stingy Qing family of the past. Although 5,000 strings of money was not a small amount, with the Qing family's current financial situation, it was still completely possible for them to take it out. What? Master, you want to send someone to the fundraising event to donate 5,000 strings of money? No. I don't agree. Madame Qing almost flipped the table when she heard this. She stood up and looked at Qing Yaojin as if he was crazy. Our family's money doesn't grow on trees. It's not easy to save some money. With that meager salary of yours, our family would have long been starving. If it wasn't for Xiao Xian letting us invest in the winery last year, Chonyo, Chuliang, and I would still be living a hard life with you. Now that you want to donate 5,000 strings of money, I think you've been living a good life and have lost your sense of measure. Moreover, that fundraising event is a matter between merchants. What does it have to do with our residents? It must be said that in ancient times, women were the best at managing a household. Before Li Zixuan appeared, the only source of income for the Qing residents was Qing Yaojin's salary and the rent paid by the commoners in the fief. Qing Yaojin was an honest and upright person and was not the type to be a corrupt official. Thus, the Qing residents could only rely on this bit of income to survive. It was barely enough to survive. After Li Zixuan appeared, because of Qing Chumo, the Qing residents finally became rich. However, Madame Qing, who was used to living a hard life, still had a strong sense of worry. When she heard that Qing Yaojin was going to waste the residents' money, how could she sit still? It would be strange if she didn't explode. Cough cough. Madam, don't be anxious. Listen to this old man slowly tell you. Seeing this, Qing Yaojin was a little scared. On the surface, he was in charge of the Duke's residence. However, that was only because his wife gave him face in front of outsiders. Secretly, he still respected his wife by 30%, oh no, 70%. When this tigress showed her power, it would be strange if he didn't cower. Then tell me. Madame Qing glared and said. All of you can leave first. Qing Yaojin put down his bowl and chopsticks and waved to the servants in the room. Everyone obeyed the order and only the husband and wife were left in the main hall. Qing Yaojin then said, Madam, this fundraising event was actually organized by Xiao Xian. Moreover, it was His Majesty who asked him to do it. Do you remember that I went to second brother Qin's house to drink wine a few days ago? At that time, Xiao Xian and His Majesty were also there. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.